Chapter 1062, Battle of the Shadow Clan, 3, I am the common people's regal, the 10,000 spirit saint, and the first legion commander under the Blazing Sun Kingdom's king, by Yun. We've been waiting for you here for a long time. Those who want to surrender can put down their weapons and say that they are willing to join our Blazing Sun Kingdom. We can spare your lives. If you choose not to surrender and stubbornly resist, there will only be one outcome. Death. Bai Yun's calm voice revealed a heavy and bloody killing intent. After several consecutive genocidal wars, he was no longer ignorant. The current he had long surpassed his former teacher, Wuxia, and had become the strongest general in the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Surrender. 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 Surrender and surrender. 1 trillion soldiers of the imperial soldier type with extraordinary tier power roared in unison. Their voices almost shook the sky, causing the wind and clouds in the world to change and the sun and moon to lose their light. Such a huge war power brought incomparable pressure to Jacro and his more than 300 billion soldiers and more than 3,600 god spirits. Many soldiers and god spirits looked hesitant, and even terrified. At this moment, they already had the intention to escape. Jacro had experienced countless wars in his life. The soldier's abnormal mentality immediately attracted his attention. Soldiers of my race, hold your breath. Don't be fooled by the threat of the female general. You are soldiers of our Shadow Clan. The people behind you are our race and your family. Do you really want to hand over your future and the lives of your relatives to a human lord? Don't forget that we have a long-standing feud with the human race. Do you think they will let go of the hatred accumulated over the years? In addition, I've already sent the inspectorate to supervise your battle from behind. If any of you choose to join the Blazing Sun Kingdom, don't even think about running to the Blazing Sun Kingdom's camp. I'll promise to wipe out all the defectors among you before you escape from the battlefield to restore the might of our army. After Jacro quickly appeased the morale of the troops, he immediately threatened them without holding back. The soldiers, and god spirits of the Shadow Clan shuddered when they heard this. Even though they didn't know what they were thinking, at least on the surface, they didn't dare to go against Jacro, a true god tier. Jacro saw that the hearts of the people were barely maintained by him. Even though his expression was still cold, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. These soldiers and god spirits were the key for the Shadow Clan to defeat the Blazing Sun Kingdom and the common people's regal. He didn't want such an important matter to fall into his hands. Break through the defenses of the Blazing Sun Kingdom's soldiers as quickly as possible and support our true god tier. Break through the defenses of the Blazing Sun Kingdom's soldiers as quickly as possible and support our true god tier, whether it's the Shadow Clan or the soldiers of our other allies, they can accept my reward. Jacro said loudly, but his heart ached. It was easy to say that he would be promoted to a true god tier cultivation resource, but when he thought about handing them over, even Aces would feel heartache for a long time, let alone him. A set of resources to advance to the true god tier was already comparable to a set of treasures at the racial foundation level after all. Even the original spirit race and the chaos gods race did not dare to underestimate resources of this level. They were now preempting the foundation of their race in advance to forcefully increase their morale. The eyes of the Shadow Clan soldiers and the soldiers of the people of foreign races turned red when they heard Jacro's words. If they were really lucky enough to obtain this set of resources to advance to the true god tier and were extremely lucky to advance to the true god tier, it could completely be described as reaching the heavens in a single step. Even if they felt that even if they had the resources to advance to the true god tier, they were not confident that they could advance to the true god tier. If they sold it, it would be enough to create a deity family that had lasted for tens of thousands of years. At this moment, most of the Shadow Clan soldiers and god spirits went crazy. They erupted with all their strength and charged in the direction of the Blazing Sun Kingdom soldiers. It was as if as long as they rushed over, they would be able to obtain a ticket to become a true god tier. Bai Yun, Wuxia, Wuxiao, Qi Xiantian, Yuan Tsong, Ing Ning, the generals, and the god spirits watched this scene with cold expressions. The morale is not bad. However, the most fundamental factor that determines the outcome of a war is still true strength. Recklessness is not enough to create a world. Bai Yun said lightly. With that, her eyes narrowed as she gave an order. All the yellow talisman Dao soldiers will rush out to hunt these enemy soldiers and protect the forbidden mage spellcasters behind us. They can cast spells normally. If a soldier from the people of foreign races rushes out of your killing circle and goes to His Majesty, you can go to the Punisher Bureau to receive your punishment tonight. All the soldiers of the Blazing Sun Kingdom roared. Then they saw the yellow talisman Dao soldiers standing in the front row charging towards the Shadow Clan soldiers and people of foreign races with sinister smiles. Under the protection of the yellow talisman Dao soldiers, the forbidden spellcasters began to wave their wands and chant forbidden spells. Then, they began to cast forbidden spells one after another, bombarding the Shadow Clan soldiers and the people of foreign races. At that time, the more than 300 billion Shadow Clan soldiers, the people of Foreign Race Alliance soldiers, and the more than 3,600 hostile god spirits were instantly beaten into a mess. These guys were stunned as soon as they exchanged blows. At the same time, high up in the sky, Zhou Fight and Zhou Zheng suddenly teleported together and looked at the battle below. I'll feel that even if we don't take action, our soldiers and gods can easily win. Zhou Fight crossed his arms and looked at the scene calmly as he commented. Hurry up and attack. I don't want these people of foreign races to be killed by our soldiers. Zhou Manage said helplessly. You can use the 10,000 Spirit Saint. I'll protect you. Zhou Fight shook his head. Sure. Zhou Manage also knew the other party's personality. He didn't hesitate and immediately released the 10,000 Spirit Saint, the only mythical tier Lord Talent. An invisible wave instantly spread to the entire Shadow Clan territory with Zhou Manage's palm as the center. In the blink of an eye, it covered the entire Shadow Clan territory and a text notification appeared. Prompt, you have activated your mythical tier unique Lord Talent, 10,000 Spirit Saint. All spirits see you as a supreme saint and long to follow you. Lord Talent Notification 1, there are approximately 3,215 trillion ordinary Shadow Clan members, 30 billion Black Iron Tier Shadow Clan soldiers, 70 billion Green Bronze Tier Shadow Clan soldiers, 5 billion White Silver Tier Shadow Clan soldiers, 69 billion Yellow Gold Tier Shadow Clan soldiers, 12 billion White Platinum Tier Shadow Clan soldiers, 219 billion Diamond Tier Shadow Clan soldiers, 223 billion Extraordinary Tier Shadow Clan soldiers, 320 million Epic Tier Shadow Clan soldiers, 125 million Legendary Tier Shadow Clan soldiers, 1,035 low-tier deity-level Shadow Clan God Spirits, 400 mid-tier deity-level Shadow Clan God Spirits, 112 high-tier deity-level Shadow Clan God Spirits, 11 true God-tier Shadow Clan God Spirits broke away from their lords and became your loyal followers. Lord Talent Notification 2, you have obtained a Spellcaster, Jia Shi, mid-tier deity-level advanced grade. Chapter 1063, Battle of the Shadow Clan, 3, just as Zhou Manage finished casting the lifeless Shadow Realm, in the Shadow Clan's true god, Ace's lifeless Shadow Realm, Zhou, who was hovering in the air, looked at the 10,000 Spirit Saints talent notification that had suddenly appeared in front of him and a smile appeared on his face. Not bad. After this round of 10,000 Spirit Saints, he had directly obtained more than 3,000 trillion ordinary Shadow Clan members. In other words, there were more than 6,000 trillion Shadow Clan members in the entire Shadow Clan territory. As expected of a powerful race that could firmly suppress the human race at Imperial Lord Pangu's peak. It was obvious just from the number of ordinary subjects. In addition, this time, the 10,000 Spirit Saint had also brought him a total of 162. 3,053 to 76 million soldiers and 1,547 god spirits. Most importantly, he had also brought the loyalty of 11 true god tiers to Zhou. One had to know that he only had 5 true gods under him, excluding Carol Moeli, who was a special true god tier. This shot from the 10,000 spirit saint directly doubled the number of true god tiers. It was comparable to the number of true god tiers in the human race. This is the strength of the mythical tier only Lord Talent. Zhou sighed. With a thought, he gave the order to all the soldiers and god spirits who had been incited by insight defection to counterattack internally. Then, he looked at the lifeless shadow realm in front of him. This was a dark world formed by the power of shadows. He was boundless and incomparably dark. If ordinary supernatural beings were here, they would probably lose their way immediately and be lost in this world forever. Zhou naturally did not have such a problem. He even calmly enjoyed the scenery of the lifeless shadow world for a while before looking at a dark corner not far away and suddenly striking out with his palm. The myriad method star palm. A starry sky divine palm that was filled with the stars of the divine kingdom suddenly flew out and quickly smashed into the dark corner. Ah! A scream sounded. Then, a figure as thick as ink flew out and landed in the air not far away. It was Aces. At that moment, he had one hand covering half of his body that was constantly turning into black fog and dissipating as he looked at Zhou with fear. You actually discovered me? He said in disbelief. The lifeless shadow realm was the intrinsic divine power of the Shadow Clan. The shadow realm summoned was almost as strong as a world. Especially since he was a true god tier, the lifeless shadow realm he summoned was not inferior to an ordinary middle world. As the master of the lifeless shadow realm, he was almost equivalent to the heavenly Tao of this world. Normally speaking, unless it was in existence at the level of a master god tier or above, it was impossible to discover his hiding location. How did the common people's regal find out? Zhou did not explain. Isis' lifeless shadow realm was indeed not bad, but he was not only a chaos human, he was also born with astonishing sixth senses and could sense many difficult things and existences. He had also reached the realm of willpower that only Master God tier had. He had just used his willpower to sense it slightly, and he had easily found this fellow's hiding place. So what if you can see through my invisibility technique? You're still going to die today. Isis' expression was cold as a dagger silently appeared in her right hand. This dagger was completely black, and only the handle had a crescent moon symbol that was as white as jade. This was the true god-tier divine artifacts, that only the Shadow Clan's clan leader could inherit. Ace's true god-tier title was Assassination and Darkest True God-tier. Most of it came from this true god-tier intermediate grade divine artifact. You should feel honored to die under my clan's inherited divine artifact. Ace said in a low voice. Then, his divine body quietly disappeared from the lifeless shadow realm. The next second, he suddenly appeared behind Zhou. The dark moon shadow blade in his hand turned into a black light and stabbed at the back of Zhou's head. He wanted to pierce through common people's regal's brain and even his divine spark, thereby killing he in one strike. But in the next moment, clang. A sound that sounded like a sharp weapon piercing the steel city wall sounded. Ace's dark moon shadow blade only managed to pierce the surface of Zhou's skin. After that, it couldn't go any further. Aces watched this scene with her mouth agape. How is this possible? Could your divine body be forged by defensive true god-tier divine artifacts? Aces said in shock. He felt as if his worldview had been overturned. How could there be a god spirit who could defend against the attacks of offensive true god-tier divine artifacts just by relying on his divine body? He gritted his teeth and his body suddenly transformed into a shadow energy that disappeared from the lifeless shadow realm. Don't waste your time. I can see where you're hiding. Zhou Zhou said loudly. With a heaven-defying body like the chaotic divine body in hand, he wouldn't be afraid of these assassins' sneak attacks. That was why he dared to enter the other party's lifeless shadow realm alone. Then, he struck out another myriad method star palm at a certain shadow. Before the divine palm could land, a pitch-black shadow flew out in advance and dodged the attack of the myriad method star palm in a sorry state. However, he had dodged it, but the lifeless shadow realm behind, he had no way of dodging it. After this palm landed, there was a loud bang, and the entire lifeless shadow realm shook violently. Then, cracks spread in all directions from where the divine palm landed. In less than 4 to 5 seconds, Rumble, the lifeless shadow world, which was comparable to a middle world, exploded with a bang and turned into shadow fog that flew in all directions before quickly disappearing into the air. After all the shadow fog disappeared, Isis' body trembled as he barely maintained his altitude. The aura on his body had already weakened by more than half. His intrinsic divine power, the lifeless shadow realm, was related to his life. Now that his intrinsic divine power had been destroyed, he naturally suffered heavy injuries. My lifeless shadow realm. My inherited divine artifact. He looked at the dark moon shadow blade while his hand was trembling. He never expected that his two strongest aspects would be completely crushed by the other party. Then, he thought of something. His eyes changed slightly, but in the end, they became firm. He looked up at Zhou Zhou. With a thought, a temporarily created world of shadows was created as the newest battlefield for the two true god tiers, he and Zhou Zhou. At the same time, Zhou Zhou looked at Aces and felt a sense of danger. He narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the other party. He thought of the information that Wu Tu had told he about the Shadow Tribe's trump cards. Without any hesitation, he struck out 3 consecutive palm strikes, determined to kill Aces. He wasn't the kind of person who would let the other party use his trump card against him despite knowing that the other party had a trump card. The danger was to strangle him in the butt. The 3 myriad method star palms arrived in front of Aces almost instantly. Chapter 1064, Master God Tier Artifact, Great Lunar Lifeless Demon Blade. Great Lunar Emperor's Vision Divine Stone. Boom! Boom! The first 2 strikes of the myriad method star palm directly struck the other party's body, shattering his divine body. At the same time, his aura instantly weakened to the extreme, as if he was about to die in the next second. However, just as the 3rd strike of the myriad method star palm was about to destroy the other party's final life force, a palm-sized great lunar stone sculpture suddenly appeared in front of Aces. The great lunar stone sculpture was completely jade-like and emitted a noble and holy moonlight. A supreme aura that ruled over the Yin emitted from its body. I'm the current patriarch of the Shadow Clan, Aces. Cough cough, I'm willing to sacrifice my life. Regal Great Lunar, please take action and destroy the enemy who wants to destroy our race. Aces said in a weak, hoarse, and determined voice. The surroundings were silent. It was as if this great lunar stone sculpture had no reaction to Isis' words at all. When Zhou Zhou saw this, he did not hesitate to strike again, killing this true god-tier advanced grade shadow race patriarch completely. After killing it, Zhou Zhou instantly felt that his promotion energy requirements for advancing to low-tier deity level advanced grade had been completely satisfied. He could advance to the low-tier deity level advanced grade as long as he had enough law comprehension. However, he wasn't paying attention to this at the moment. He was staring intently at the great lunar stone sculpture. I've already killed him. He wouldn't emerge now, right? Zhou Zhou frowned. After waiting for a while and seeing no reaction from him, Zhou Zhou heaved a sigh of relief. He walked forward and prepared to put away the great lunar stone sculpture. This was a master god tier level treasure, so he naturally could not waste it. However, just as he was about to fly over, he saw the great lunar stone sculpture tremble slightly. Following that, wisps of clear moonlight emitted from the surface of its body. With it as the core, he quickly constructed an existence that wore a moon-white holy robe. Its body was transparent, and its face was blurry. It was the phantom of the regal great lunar that was as famous as the sun star. Facing this existence that was even stronger than the abyss, Zhou could not help but take a deep breath. Even though he had already heard about this great lunar stone sculpture from Wuxia before he came, but when facing this legendary existence, he still felt an incomparable pressure. Regal Great Lunar is a top-notch god spirit of the heavenly pantheon. Together with Regal Sun, he controls all the heavenly gods in the myriad worlds. He can be said to be the god emperor among the heavenly gods. At the same time, he is the same as Regal Great Solar, also a natural-born regal. In terms of strength and status, they are even higher than the supreme god realm and even the abyss M/Il, second only to the supreme will and the crimson overlord. As expected of an existence born as a regal, Zhou muttered in his heart. He was an acquired regal. Of course, the difference between a born regal and an acquired regal was actually not that big. There was also a possibility that an acquired regal could catch up or even surpass an innate regal. Hence, Zhou did not belittle himself. At this moment, the phantom of the regal great lunar looked at Zhou. Right on the heels of that, a holy white divine light shot out from his body and shot straight at Zhou. That incomparably terrifying pressure was undoubtedly an attack at the Master God tier level. When Zhou saw this, he immediately reacted quickly and put on a black armor. As soon as the black armor possessed him, it immediately spread to his entire body, enveloping him, without revealing any gaps. In the next moment, the holy white divine light landed on Zhou's black helmet that extended out of his black armor. A magical scene happened. After the holy white divine light hit the black helmet, there was no earth-shattering explosion. Instead, it was slowly and laboriously sucked into the helmet like water melting in the ground. After a while, the divine light from the Regal Great Lunar Phantom was actually absorbed by the black helmet. Regal Great Lunar didn't do anything else when he saw this. His entire phantom turned into countless lunar rays of light and dissipated in the air, leaving behind a dull gray spherical stone. Zhou heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, I was prepared. I specially prepared an Earth Elemental Master God Level 1, time-use defensive treasure, Black Mountain Divine Earth, to block this elemental attack. Otherwise, there might really be some danger and I might waste my resurrection counts when in a hurry. He muttered to himself. Then, with a thought, the black piece of soil trembled and then disintegrated into countless powders that dissipated in the air. Looks like it has reached its limit after absorbing a round of attacks from the Regal Great Lunar Phantom. Zhou felt that it was a pity. However, when he thought of the possible loots on Aces, he couldn't help but smile. That guy had a true god-level intermediate grade divine artifact, Dark Moon Shadow Blade. If he extracted his spoils of war this time, he would definitely be able to obtain a Master God tier intermediate grade divine artifact. Compared to the Master God divine artifact, this loss was nothing. Thinking of this, he immediately looked up at the gray spherical stone not far away and Isis' broken divine body behind it. Zhou waved his right hand, and the gray spherical stone and broken divine body flew over and landed in his hand. A magical scene happened. After landing in his hands, the gray stone, which had been dim a moment ago, seemed to have been replenished and restored from a mysterious place. In the blink of an eye, it became jade-like again. In fact, the pure moonlight and supreme aura it emitted were several times stronger than when it was in Isis' hands. Zhou looked at it. The item information appeared. Treasure name, Great Lunar Emperor's Vision Divine Stone, Treasure Grade, Master God Tier Elementary Grade, Treasure Effect, Summon the Spirit of the Great Lunar Stone Sculpture. It can release a divine light attack that is comparable to Master God Tier Elementary Grade. Treasure Description, originally, it was just a great lunar spirit stone that wanted to polish itself into the shape of a lunar star. Later on, the supreme and holy regal great lunar discovered the other party and cast a gaze on it, creating this master god tier great lunar emperor's vision divine stone. Current usage of the great lunar divine light, 0 out of 1, prompt, with the enhancement of your collector's lord talent, the current usage of the great lunar divine light has increased to 4/4, so the main body of this thing is actually a conscious great lunar spirit stone. Just because of regal great lunar's gaze, his grade was raised to the level of a master god tier and even became the trump card of a powerful race. Zhou could not help but click his tongue. This origin was too ridiculous. Moreover, regal great lunar was indeed in existence second only to the supreme will and the crimson overlord. A single gaze could actually create a master god tier treasure. If he encountered the other party would probably kill him with a single glance. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Then, his gaze landed on Isis' corpse as he carefully studied his spoils of war. After reading it, he revealed a smile. As expected of a true god-tier advanced grade patriarch-level expert. He had thousands of spoils of war. The weakest among them was a lesser god, and the highest was naturally the intermediate true god-tier Dark Moon Shadow Blade. No, it should be called the Great Lunar Demon Blade, a Master God intermediate grade divine artifact. Apart from that, even though there were no other Master God divine artifacts, there were still hundreds of Master God tier medicinal herbs, potions, ores, fruits, seeds, and other miscellaneous treasures. Zhou was quite satisfied with this. Then, he looked down at the battlefield. Chapter 1065, Overwhelming Force on the Battlefield. The scales of victory on the battlefield had already tilted to the Blazing Sun Kingdom's side with an overwhelming advantage. The most important reason was naturally the order that Zhou had just given to the enemy to counterattack from within the Insight defection. There were more than 160 billion soldiers, more than 1,500 god spirits, and a total of 11 true god tier after all. Half of the soldiers and god spirits instantly became the enemies of their comrades. Moreover, in the blink of an eye, they counterattacked their comrades. How could they react? Even those true god-tier existences were affected by this sudden change. As for the Shadow Clan's alliance army, they had also lost a third of their remaining soldiers and god spirits in less than half an hour because of this sudden internal betrayal. After that, this group of Shadow Clan allied army soldiers and god spirits reacted. Faced with the internal strife of their own people and the attacks of the Blazing Sun Kingdom soldiers and god spirits outside, how could they, who had already fallen into a huge military disadvantage and a god spirit disadvantage, still withstand it? In less than a moment, they were at an absolute disadvantage and had no chance of turning the tables. The Shadow Clan's true god, Jakro, couldn't help but feel grief, indignation, and despair when he saw the Shadow Clan's army struggling to resist. In the current situation, he really had no way of saving him. If the Patriarch can kill that common people's regal in his lifeless shadow realm, we might still have a chance to salvage the situation. Jakro suddenly had this thought. As Asi's most trusted brother, the #1 true god tier of the Shadow tribe, he naturally knew that Aces had a Master God tier level trump card. However, the conditions for using that trump card seemed to be a little harsh, so Aces had always kept it a secret. If Aces dared to use that Master God tier trump card to kill that common people's regal, they would definitely have a chance to turn the tables. Moreover, the Shadow Clan would also receive the recognition of countless top races and super experts in the future because of this matter. They might have a chance to reach the heavens in a single step. Just as Jakro held the last hope in his heart, a loud explosion suddenly sounded in the sky. Then, the shadows of two god spirits flashed and disappeared. In a short period of time, they opened up a new combat world and disappeared. Even though this period of time was extremely short, Jakro still saw some clues. Their Patriarch's lifeless shadow world seemed to have been destroyed by the other party before he had no choice but to reveal himself. This common people's regal dares to use the power of a true god-tier in the high continent and scrupulously just because his true strength is only low-tier deity level intermediate grade. As for true gods, they have to be restricted by the agreement and cannot use their powers freely in the high continent. True god tiers like us are actually subjected to greater restrictions than a low-tier deity-level god spirit like him. Jacro couldn't help but feel aggrieved when he saw his patriarch take the initiative to create a combat world. However, he was also shocked by the strength of the common people's regal at the same time. To be able to forcefully blow up the lifeless Shadow Realm in Isis' lifeless Shadow Realm, this meant that the other party's strength had definitely crushed the patriarch of their Shadow clan. If Aces didn't use any trump cards, he would probably die without a doubt. Patriarch, oh Patriarch, now is not the time to hide. Hurry up and take out your trump card to destroy this arrogant common people's regal. Jacro thought silently. He had absolute confidence in the Master God tier trump card that Aces had. He didn't believe that even if the Lord of the common people's regal could be ahead of many lords of the myriad races, could he still be ahead of the veteran races that had managed their races for countless years? Even Emperor Pangu, who was known to be invincible among true god-tier experts back then, did not have that confidence. Unless the other party also had a Master God-tier trump card, but how could that be? What kind of luck did the common people's regal have to be able to obtain a Master God-tier treasure in such a short period of time? The legendary luck and the luck of the true god-tier of drama were not that ridiculous. But in the next moment, a spatial crack appeared in the sky. A figure took a step forward and looked down at the battlefield below. He wore the Emperor Dragon robe and had the regal Sage Dao sword at his waist. His aura was supreme. His pitch-black eyes looked at the two sides fighting below, as if he was the ruler of the world watching the battle between the life forms of the lower realm. It was the common people's regal, Zhou. Jacro stared at him blankly. He actually walked out of the warring world created by Aces so easily without any injuries. Then wouldn't our patriarch be? He didn't dare to think further. A majestic voice descended from the sky and resounded in the hearts of every soldier and god spirit on both sides of the battle. Shadow Race Patriarch, Aces has been killed by our common people's regal. Why aren't you surrendering? Otherwise, do you want to follow him to the netherworld of the dead? The soldiers and god spirits were stunned. Then, they looked up. Zhou was flying high in the sky, holding a token that emitted a shadow aura. This was the Shadow Divine token that only the Shadow Clan Patriarch could possess. The Shadow Clan soldiers and the Alliance soldiers looked at this token helplessly and anxiously. They could not help but feel that it was ridiculous. According to those big shots, shouldn't their role in this battle be the absolute advantage? Why was he not only at an absolute disadvantage in terms of ordinary soldiers and god spirits? Even the leader of this battle was dead. What was the point of fighting then? Realizing this, the morale of the soldiers and gods fell to the lowest point. Among them, Jacro's divine body trembled as he looked at Zhou and the divine shadow token in his hand. Brother, why? Why? He was sad, he was crying, and he was in despair. However, he was not afraid. In fact, the desire to tear common people's regal apart was more than 1,000,000 times stronger. Kill. 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 Kill them all. If I see a soldier, general, or even a god spirit taking a step back or even surrendering, forget about Zhou, I'll kill all of you first. Let's see if he will protect you faster or if I will kill you faster. Recalling his tens of thousands of years of friendship with Aces and the trustworthy face that the other party had given him before he left, Jacro went completely crazy. Perhaps his elder brother already knew that he might not return this time, so he handed him the Shadow Divine token that only the Patriarch could grasp and asked him to command all the Shadow Clan members and soldiers before he left. Common people's regal. I'll kill you. He gritted his teeth in his heart. All the Shadow Clan and Alliance soldiers couldn't help but shiver when they heard this true God-tier's words. They were indeed afraid of the common people's regal, but they were more afraid of Jacro, who could take their lives faster. Under the fear of death, they could only do their best to resist the attacks of the Blazing Sun Kingdom's soldiers that were like a vast ocean. High up in the sky, Zhou also saw this scene. A man at the end of his rope. It's just an act of fighting a cornered beast. The ending won't change. He shook his head. He, who was familiar with the other party's information, naturally knew that the Shadow Clan did not have any other threatening trump cards other than the great lunar stone sculpture. As for the other true god-tiers of the people of foreign races who came to help, Zhou did not know if they had any master god-tier trump cards. However, looking at these true god-tiers, they still looked like they were desperately resisting but were helpless. There was a high chance that they did not. They would have long used it if they had any. Then, he looked at the Yellow Emperor and company. "I'll give you another surprise that we agreed on yesterday." He smiled. Chapter 1066, The Surprise for the Yellow Emperor and the Others. The Destruction of the Shadow Clan. Zhou flicked his fingers. A large number of ancient green bronze-tier phantoms flew out from his fingertip and landed on the Yellow Emperor, the Buddha Lord, Bai, Patriarch Lu, and the other true god-tiers as well as the human god-spirits who had come to help. The human race god-spirits did not sense anything at first. However, when a human mid-tier deity, true immortal Tai Sui, relied on his divine artifact and abundant magic power to kill a mid-tier deity elementary grade blood moon god spirit, he suddenly felt the magic power in his body suddenly soared. In the blink of an eye, it reached the limit of his own magic power, and it was faintly showing signs of breaking through the upper limit of his magic power and reaching another realm. True immortal Tai Sui was stunned. He first observed his surroundings and realized that there were no enemies nearby. After he was temporarily safe, he immediately checked his body in disbelief and surprise. He realized that his senses were right. "I'm really going to advance. Could this be a reward from the heavens for my actions of protecting the human race? Otherwise, how could I have obtained a cultivation level comparable to 10,000 years of bitter cultivation at once?" True immortal Tai Sui muttered excitedly. He had just killed a mid-tier deity-level god spirit from a people of foreign races. The cultivation level he had obtained could also be said to be a promotion energy. It was almost comparable to the promotional energy he had provided him by killing dozens of mid-tier deity-level super experts. How could he not be excited? How could he not think that it was just our reward from the heavens? But soon, he realized that something was amiss. This was because he saw that there were many human god spirits around him. After killing the god spirits of the people of foreign races, his dermic powers and cultivation suddenly soared. He had a faint feeling that he was about to break through to the next level. Even if some god spirits did not immediately reach the calm state of advancement, the magic power fluctuations around them had also increased greatly. Clearly, they had benefited greatly. What's going on? The true immortal Tai Sui was deceived. The other immortals were also deceived. Yellow Emperor, Buddha Lord, and the other human true god-tiers were also deceived. This was because they also felt that the promotion energy in their bodies had also increased rapidly, obtaining unimaginable promotion energy. Fortunately, they were veterans of the battlefield. Even though they were shocked by the abnormality in their bodies, they did not lose their vigilance. Otherwise, many immortals would have died just from being deceived for a while. At this moment, Zhou's voice resounded in the hearts of the Yellow Emperor, Buddha Lord, and other human god spirits. "Everyone, don't panic. Just now, this king used my lord's law and borrowed the power of the master god tier to superimpose a layer of the law of war's enhancement effect on everyone. The effect is, as long as you kill an enemy, the promotion energy you obtain from the other party, in addition to the usual promotion energy you can also obtain 50 additional promotion energy. Which means, if everyone kills an enemy now, all the promotion energy obtained will be equivalent to all the war energy obtained by killing 51 enemies. The duration of this buff is about 10 days. During this period, everyone can use the buffs of the law of war to their heart's content against our enemies. As for 10 days later, if you want to continue maintaining this layer of war enhancement, as long as you don't do anything evil, feel free to ask me for it. As soon as these words were spoken, the immortals were stunned. This powerful buff was actually created by their patriarch. Then, they seemed to realize something. When they looked at the enemies in front of them, the meaning in their eyes changed. They looked at these enemies like a pack of wolves looking at their prey. Such a large increase in promotion energy was like a path to heaven in front of them. If they did not take advantage of this opportunity to earn a large sum of promotion energy for themselves, they would be letting down the opportunity their patriarch had given them. I have to consider if this is the only chance I have in my life. Let's do it, brothers. Kill, kill, kill. Damn it, if I don't kill them to death, I'll regret it to death in the future. I'll set a small goal and raise my strength to the limit of my potential with the help of the law of war. The god spirits were extremely excited. Then, they roared and rushed towards the Shadow Clan god spirits and the people of foreign races. Right now, be it the advantage of military strength, the advantage of generals, the advantage of heroes, the advantage of god spirits, the advantage of equipment and divine artifacts, or even the advantage of true god tier and the advantage of the strongest, they were all on their side. If he died, he could ask his friend to request the patriarch to revive him for free. What was there for them to be afraid of with an advantage and a backup plan? Just do it. The Yellow Emperor and the others also looked at each other, their eyes filled with undisguised shock. No wonder the strength of the patriarch and the soldiers and god spirits under him increased so quickly. So they actually have such a heaven-defying enhancement. If this had happened to me a long time ago, even though the Yellow Emperor and company didn't continue, their voices were already filled with envy and pity. To be able to become a true god tier and become a leader at the level of the speaker of the human race, they were not people with mediocre potential. If this benefit had been with them long ago, they might have long reached the level of standing shoulder to shoulder with Imperial Lord Pangu or even surpassing him. How could they have been forced to retreat to the primordial world by these enemies? However, they knew that it was impossible, so they did not think too much about it. They looked at the true god tiers of the people of foreign races who were not affected by the 10,000 spirit saint. They looked at each other and rushed towards them without hesitation. In the sky, Zhou Zhou couldn't help but smile when he saw the god spirits of the human race suddenly become fierce and belligerent after receiving his buff. It seems that the Lord's nomological techniques I comprehended are not bad. He nodded in satisfaction. The buffing ability of the law of war was naturally comprehended by him and his two clones through comprehending the mythical tiers 1 and only Lord Talent, 10 sacred blessings, the protection of the War Master God, Terence. It allowed Zhou Zhou to bestow the Master God's blessing to a small number of life forms, giving them an additional 50 times increase in promotion energy. It was equivalent to the effect of the diamond level Lord Talent, blessing of the 10 gods, blessing of the war god. This way, Zhou Zhou would be able to enhance the innate abilities of living beings that had not joined the Blazing Sun Kingdom. For example, Yellow Emperor and the other human gods. It was unrealistic to let them all join the Blazing Sun Kingdom. But now that Zhou Zhou was the patriarch of the human race, it was impossible for him to ignore them. This skill, which was equivalent to half a Lord's Law skill, could allow the human soldiers and god spirits who were not from the Blazing Sun Kingdom to grow faster. Even though the scope of application is not wide at present, these would also increase in the future as his comprehension of Lord's Law and his god spirit realm increased. In the following period of time, he did not participate in the battle at all. He left the battlefield to the soldiers and god spirits. The sky gradually darkened. When the sun set and darkness descended on the high continent, the battlefield gradually returned to calm. Apart from the living beings of the Blazing Sun Kingdom and those who had surrendered, everyone else on the battlefield had already become corpses and captives. The soldiers, heroes, and god spirits of the Blazing Sun Kingdom had already begun to clean up the battlefield. Meanwhile, Zhou was led by a Shadow Clan true god tier who had been influenced by the 10,000 spirit saint towards the Shadow Sacred Hall's treasury. Chapter 1067, Shadow Domain. Tarot calls allegiance. The Shadow Clan's treasury was located under the Shadow Temple. Zhou and this Shadow Clan true god tier god spirit named Tarot passed through 7 or 8 secret underground passageways before arriving at a silent and empty underground palace. At the center of the palace, there was a dim teleportation formation. "Your Majesty, can I borrow the Shadow Divine Token?" The spatial teleportation array to the Shadow Clan's treasure vault can only be activated by a Shadow Clan true god tier with a Shadow Divine Token. Zhou nodded and did not say anything. He took out the Shadow Divine Token and handed it to the other party. "Thank you for your trust, Your Majesty." Tarot nodded gratefully. He didn't expect that as a true god tier who had just surrendered and joined the Blazing Sun Kingdom, he could actually obtain such great trust from this common people's regal. Once he obtained this Shadow Divine Token, he could use this spatial teleportation array to escape to the Shadow Clan's treasure vault after all. However, His Majesty actually trusted him so much. Tarot took a deep breath and no longer had any other thoughts. He walked to the spatial teleportation array and first formed a seal to inject the Shadow Divine Token into it before injecting his true god tier divine power into it. The next second, rumble, the entire underground palace began to tremble faintly. Then, around the spatial teleportation array that had been shut down, streams of shadow airflow suddenly dissipated. Zhou narrowed his eyes slightly. He could tell that it was not an ordinary shadow airflow. Instead, it had the divine power of the shadow nomological laws that were imprinted by different true god tiers of the Shadow Clan. As soon as these shadow nomological divine powers came out, they surged into the spatial teleportation array crazily. After all the shadow nomological divine powers were injected into it, the spatial fluctuations around the spatial teleportation array gradually turned from dead silence to abnormally active. Obviously, this spatial teleportation array had already been activated. At this moment, Tarot, who was standing in front of the spatial teleportation array, turned around and bowed respectfully to Zhou. "Your Majesty, the spatial teleportation array has been activated." "Your Majesty, please follow me." Zhou nodded before entering the spatial teleportation array with Tarot. In the Shadow Clan's treasure vault world. On a black mountain, there was a sacred hall heavily guarded by the Shadow Clan. In the holy temple, on the spatial teleportation array. The spatial teleportation array emitted a gentle silver light before Zhou and Tarot's figures appeared on the teleportation array. "Your Majesty, we've arrived at our Shadow Clan's treasure vault world." Tarot said respectfully. "This is a small world personally created by your Shadow Clan's true god tier." Zhou swept his gaze over and saw through this world. He clicked his tongue in wonder. "Your Majesty has good eyesight. This treasury world has been built since the era of our first Shadow Clan patriarch. Along the way, it has been continuously strengthened by 21 Shadow Clan patriarchs and has continued until now. Even though its current scale is only the size of a small world, in terms of defense and concealment ability, it can already compare to a boundless universe treasure vault. Furthermore, our patriarchs have also used the shadow sand technique to build the small world's main body on top of a shadow sand. It can be stored in any spatial treasure. Even the lowest grade black iron tier storage equipment can contain the shadow sand that carries the treasure vault world. If your Majesty wants to take that shadow sand, I can bring your Majesty to the world's origin core to take it later." Tarokal said proudly before speaking respectfully to Zhou Zhou. Sure. Zhou Zhou nodded. If this world of the Shadow Sand Vault was really as magical as this guy said, then he could bring it back and use it as the treasure vault of their Blazing Sun Kingdom. Those treasure vault buildings were already not enough to store his vast number of loots. An entire small world could be used for a very long time. Tarokal nodded before bringing Zhou Zhou around the entire treasure vault world. Your Majesty, this is the Diamond Tier Regional Territory, Wanbao Mountain. It's specially used to store special treasures that are not equipment. This is the territory of the legendary tier region, the Shadow Soldier Sea. This vast sea is formed by the purifying essence spirit water. It's extremely suitable for storing protective equipment. There are trillions of weapons and equipment stored inside. From Black Iron tier equipment to legendary tier equipment, be it combat profession free equipment, soldier type profession equipment, life profession craftsman equipment, or other types of equipment, there's everything here. Moreover, they're all extremely well preserved. Apart from that, at the bottom of the Divine Weapon Sea, there's also a Divine Artifact Tower. There are 106 Divine Artifacts stored inside. There are all kinds of equipment from low level to high tier deity level. However, the attributes are different. Most of them are Shadow-type Divine Artifacts, and only a few are Divine Artifacts of other attributes. This is the Palace of Beauty. There are tens of millions of beauties from various races that we have collected from the myriad races in the world. Even if every life form has different aesthetic standards, they can definitely find the opposite sex they like here. This is the Heavenly Materials and Earthly Treasures mountain range. The entire mountain range is made of all kinds of heavenly materials and earthly treasures. This is the machinery field. There are about 10 million legendary tier Machina race spaceships and 10,000 low-tier deity-level spaceships inside. These are the spoils of war that our Shadow Clan once traded with a distant Machina race lord faction. Unfortunately, that Machina race lord faction was destroyed later on, and we no longer updated these machinery civilization items. However, their functions are still intact. Tarokal introduced the treasures stored in various regions of the Shadow Clan's treasure vault world. It was more than a myriad of types. It could simply be described as a myriad of types. Just a mountain range of natural treasures was worth more than 10 billion legendary tier mist cores. Not to mention other more precious places. Even Zhou Zhou, who had seen countless loots, saw many treasures that he had never seen before in this treasure vault world. As expected of a race with a super empire-level lord faction. The racial heritage was indeed not something that the people of foreign races that he had conquered in the past could compare to. Zhou Zhou sighed inwardly. On the surface, he was very calm, as if he had seen the world. Tarokal became even more careful and respectful. A moment later, they arrived at a square. On the huge square, there were 11 Empire-level monuments of different sizes. Among them, there were 6 beginner-grade Empire Jade Steels, 4 intermediate-grade Empire Jade Steels, and 1 advanced-grade Empire Jade Steel. Their bodies were like jade. The shortest was 100 meters tall, and the tallest was 1,000 meters tall. It was on a completely different level from the kingdom's golden steel. Zhou Zhou looked at the 11 Imperial Jade Tablets and had an idea. Rumble. The 11 Imperial Jade Tablets shattered along with his thoughts, revealing the high-tier deity-level Advanced Grade Territory Token, high-tier deity-level Advanced Grade Territory Token, and high-tier deity-level Advanced Grade Advanced Empire Token. They added up to a total of 33 tokens, which were all stored in his king's treasure box. When Tarokal saw this scene, he had mixed feelings. The collapse of the Empire's Jade Tablet meant that the Shadow Clan had been completely annihilated. If not for the common people's regal taking them in, they would probably have become refugees without a country. However, joining the common people's regal's Blazing Sun Kingdom and becoming a citizen of the Blazing Sun Kingdom might not necessarily be a bad thing. Tarokal sensed the potential of the Master God tier that he had just advanced to not long ago. He took a deep breath and revealed a sincere smile from the bottom of his heart. "Congratulations, Your Majesty, for becoming the ruler of the Shadow Clan's territory," he said sincerely and respectfully. "From now on, the Shadow Canopy will be a domain-level territory of MV Blazing Sun Kingdom. It can be called the Shadow Domain. You are the new lord of the Shadow Domain, the current patriarch of the Shadow Clan," Zhou Zhou ordered calmly. He easily placed this important appointment on the other party. Tarokal was an intermediate-grade true god, and his potential was also an advanced-grade true god. Now, with the support of the Sword of Xian Yuan and the Sun Moon Star Sword, he had directly advanced to become a top-notch advanced-grade Master God. In addition, the other party was influenced by the peaceful times and was already extremely loyal to him. It was not a big deal to hand this domain lord over to him. "Thank you for your grace, Your Majesty. The true god of shadow and blood blade, Tarokal, am willing to die for Your Majesty." Tarokal knelt on the ground in excitement and gratitude. Zhou Zhou sensed that the other party had become a fanatic believer and nodded slightly. He did not feel excited at all. If he became a Holy Spirit tier believer, he might be pleasantly surprised. However, it was always a good thing to have a true God tier advanced grade fanatic believer in the territory. Even if I were given another 10 true God tier advanced grade combat power, their combined power wouldn't allow me to break through the bottleneck of Master God tier combat power. As for that Master God tier intermediate grade Great Lunar Demon Blade, I can't use it at a higher level even with my Master God tier chaotic sacred power. Zhou Zhou felt that it was a pity. Chapter 1068, Capture Jakro. Brother Race, Shadow Clan. The difference between a Master God tier and a True God tier was too great. He could use True God tier divine artifacts at a higher level through King when he was at the Legendary tier level. Yet, he was at the low tier deity level intermediate grade, but he couldn't use a Master God tier intermediate grade divine artifact through King. Perhaps if you give me a Master God tier elementary grade divine artifact, they'll be able to use it at a higher level. Zhou Zhou had other thoughts and could give this idea a try. However, this operation to destroy the enemy clan could not be stopped. Among the 5 main people of foreign races that had stopped the human race from retreating to the primordial world, the Shadow Clan had already been destroyed by him. Each of the other 4 races should have the foundation of true God-tier divine artifacts. As long as he could destroy them, it shouldn't be difficult for him to obtain an elementary grade Master God-tier divine artifact from them. At that time, he would be able to test if he could control a Master God-tier elementary grade divine artifact. If he could control it, he would have a high chance of dealing with Uriel. In the following period of time, Tarokal continued to show Zhou Zhou around the Shadow Clan's treasure vault world, introducing the many treasures stored here. The 2 of them were true god tiers. As they flew and browsed, they quickly saw most of the treasures in the treasure vault world. It had to be said that as a powerful race that could firmly suppress the human race, the treasures stored by he had indeed dazzled Zhou Zhou. However, if one thought about it carefully, it was actually just like that. The total value was probably not even 1/5 of the total value of the 30 true God-tier divine artifacts in his hands. With this in mind, Zhou Zhou lost interest in continuing reading. He directly got Tarokal to bring him to the core of the treasure vault world. Even though Tarokal felt a little regretful when he heard that, he still brought Zhou Zhou to the origin core. The source core of the treasury world was in a shadow law source world deep within the treasury world. This place was a world of its own, filled with the power of the laws of shadow. The source of the power of the law of shadows was a grain of black shadow sand floating in the sky in the center of the source world. After Zhou Zhou was brought here, he immediately noticed the shadow sand. Then, he raised his hand and controlled the shadow sand to fly into his hand. Then, he directly recognized it as his private property. "It'll take away the resources in your treasure vault. In the future, the development resources of your shadow clan will be distributed by the officials of our kingdom. It won't be any less than the resources you used before. Also, this set of shadow-type true god-tier divine artifacts is for you. Zhou Zhou casually took out a set of low-level true god-tier laws of shadow true god divine artifacts and gave them to the other party. In the future, as the ruler of the shadow domain, you need to oversee the shadow clan. Enhancing your strength is indispensable. Otherwise, not only will you and the shadow clan lose face, but it will also bring shame to our Blazing Sun Kingdom. It will even make other enemies think that our Blazing Sun Kingdom is weak and easy to bully. These 6 true god-tier divine artifacts will help you increase your strength. The weapons belong to you as your reward for joining the Blazing Sun Kingdom. As for the other 5 true god-tier divine artifacts, he'll lend them to you for the time being. When you've established enough military merits, you can come to the capital to exchange for them and turn them into true god-tier divine artifacts that truly belong to you. Zhou Zhou said. Thank you for your reward, your majesty. Tarokal was overjoyed as he knelt on one knee in gratitude. He had been a little worried just now. After His Majesty took away the Shadow Clan's treasury world, what would support the future development of the Shadow Clan? Unexpectedly, not only did His Majesty immediately provide a solution, but he even gave the right to use the 6 true god-tier artifacts. He even directly rewarded him with one of the true god-tier divine artifacts. What kind of noble and generous monarch was this? At this moment, Tarokal even had the intention of being Zhou Zhou's dog. As for the treasure vault, so be it. What does it have to do with me? Even if His Majesty didn't give the Shadow Clan any resources to develop in the future and let them earn everything themselves, he felt that it wasn't a loss at all. Get up. As long as you are loyal to me, such a reward, or even something better, will be yours. Zhou Zhou raised his hand, and Tarokal stood up uncontrollably. There was no time to be shocked. With a thought, Zhou Zhou controlled the Shadow Sand Treasury World in his hand. The space around the two of them changed. Then, he saw that the two of them had already returned to the location of the spatial teleportation array. Then, the two of them did not waste any more time and left directly, returning to the Shadow Temple on the ground. As soon as he returned to the Temple of Shadows, a forbidden Archmage General who had been waiting for a long time walked over quickly and said respectfully to Zhou Zhou, Your Majesty, the #1 true god of the Shadow Clan, Jakro, suddenly appeared from a pile of Shadow Clan corpses and quickly fled in the direction away from the Shadow Clan's territory. Your Excellency Heras, Your Excellency Yellow Emperor, Your Excellency Buddha Lord, and 5 other true god-tier gods have already led an army to pursue him. Zhou Zhou nodded. What is Bai Yun doing? He asked. Legion Commander Bai Yun is currently sorting out the gains from this war and educating the captives who are unwilling to surrender. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly. Looks like we'll have to wait a while. He muttered to himself. Tarokal hurriedly nodded when he heard that. Zhou Zhou turned to look at he and suddenly thought of something. He took out the Great Lunar Emperor's Vision Divine Stone. Spirit of the Great Lunar Stone Sculpture, I almost forgot to ask you before. Previously, when I saw that Aces used you, he sacrificed his life. Why don't I have any requests? Zhou Zhou asked curiously. After a while, the Great Lunar Emperor's Vision Divine Stone, which had been silent all this while, suddenly said. Using the light from the Great Lunar Emperor's Vision Divine Stone requires the power of that gaze. Once it's used up, it'll become an ordinary Great Lunar Spirit Stone again. I've paid so much. Of course, I have to control my existence and pay a price. As for Your Excellency Regal, your body possesses a magical and magnificent power. It even increased my origin energy by several times. I can't ask you for anything. Zhou Zhou was speechless. So that was the reason. It seemed that this treasure was also based on one's judgment. You made a smart choice. You won't regret it. Zhou Zhou smiled. The great lunar emperor's vision divine stone moved slightly in response. At this moment, Hera's voice came from outside the temple. Your Majesty, Jacro has been arrested. Bring him up. Zhou Zhou ordered. Yes, Your Majesty. Hera said respectfully. Soon, he, the Yellow Emperor, and the other 5 true god tiers joined forces to detain a true god tier whose body was in tatters and covered in blood. It was Jacro. The first thing Jacro saw was Zhou Zhou. At this moment, his expression was still very calm, as if he had already accepted his fate. But when he saw Tarokal beside Zhou Zhou, his eyes suddenly widened. Then, he realized something and suddenly roared crazily. Tartkal, what are you doing? Why are you standing behind that guy? Jacro, I've already acknowledged the common people's regal as my master. I advise you to watch your words. El might even be able to plead for you in front of His Majesty so that you have a chance to serve His Majesty. Otherwise, Tarokal looked at him coldly and advised. You actually betrayed my brother and our shadow clan. You traitor, traitor. Have you forgotten what we did for you? We've invested so many resources in you, and this is how you treat us, the Shadow Clan. You're even one of the candidates for the future leader of the Shadow Clan. Are you worthy of our approval? Jacro became even crazier and interrupted Tarokal. Your approval? Tarokal glared at him. Hasn't the Shadow Clan long become Aces and your dominant power? You're also a member of the Shadow Clan, an advanced grade true god tier, and you've also made so many contributions to the Shadow Clan. Just because Aces and you are brothers, you became the #1 true god tier worshipper of the Shadow Clan. Have you, Jacro, forgotten how many times you've lost to me during our usual sparring sessions? Why is it that a weakling like you can become the #1 true god tier of the Shadow Clan while one can only be #2? Look at Aces. The enemy is right in front of us and he didn't hesitate to give you the Shadow Divine token. He didn't even look at me. Why? Why is he doing this? What's the point of making me the so-called candidate for the Patriarch? Will I become the joke of the other true god tier when you are chosen? Jacro opened his mouth but couldn't say anything to refute. However, Tarokal wasn't finished. And my new master? He has clearly just taken me in as a subordinate, but he has already handed over the huge territory of the Shadow Clan to me to manage. I am now the ruler of the Shadow Clan. The Shadow Divine token has been given to me by His Majesty. My Majesty is the wise Lord that I deserve to be loyal to for the rest of my life. Not you as my brother race. Tarokal took out the shadow token that Zhou Zhou had given him and raised it high for Jacro to see. Jacro looked at the divine shadow token and then at Zhou Zhou and Tarokal. He gradually smiled tragically. Chapter 1069, The Battle for the Divine Kingdom's Throne begins. Elizariel's request for help. Jacro stopped talking. The other party had a numb and dazed expression no matter what Zhou Zhou and Tarokal said. It was hard to imagine that such an expression would appear on a top-notch true god tier who controlled the life and death of a race. This guy's ready to die. Kill him. Zhou Zhou shook his head. Yes. Hera said respectfully. Then, the other true god tier and him escorted him out of the Temple of Shadows. After being detained out of the Temple of Shadows, Jacro looked back at the tall and majestic Temple of Shadows. The scene of the temple collapsing seemed to appear in his dark and numb eyes. At the Temple of Shadows, Tarokal watched with a complicated expression as Jacro was detained. Why? Are you soft-hearted? Zhou Zhou looked at him and asked with a faint smile. El wouldn't dare. I'm just a little emotional. Even though our Shadow Clan can't be said to be completely invincible around the territory we once ruled, we have never encountered an existence that we can't resist or reconcile with. Therefore, we have never encountered such a crisis of extermination. Now that danger has suddenly appeared, even before I can react, the Shadow Clan has already been destroyed. Terokal pursed his lips. The struggle of all races exceeds my imagination. It's too fast. When Zhou Zhou heard that, his expression was calm and he did not say anything. Actually, under normal circumstances, without a special existence like him, the lords of all races should still be fighting among themselves at this stage. The civilizations behind the lords of all races should still be watching the big show of the lord of all races like spectators. However, because of his sudden rise, the prairie fire of the lord of all races was spread to the civilization behind the lord in advance. These races and civilizations probably didn't expect that the huge lord of all races competition would undergo such a huge change because of them, and their progress would be so much faster. Zhou Zhou naturally had no regrets about this. The battle for supremacy progressed faster and faster. The more beneficial it was to a lord of all races like him who had a weak foundation. Otherwise, prolonging the battle for supremacy and letting the lords of the other races slowly unleash their own civilization would only increase their advantage. At that time, the other weak lords of the other races would basically not have to play and could just surrender. A moment later, Haras quickly walked over with a spatial ring and a world ring. Then, he said respectfully, "Your Majesty, this is the spoils of war after Jakro's death, as well as the world ringing on him." Zhou Zhou nodded. Then, with a thought, he saw that the two rings had already teleported from Hera's hand to him. He first entered the spatial ring and then shook his head. Jakro's spoils of war were much lesser than Ace's. Other than the 18 true God-tier divine artifacts and 30 to 40 master God-tier materials that dropped, there was nothing else to see. However, the only interesting thing was that there was an epic tier Lord Talent Sphere and 5 epic tier Lord Talent Crystal fragments inside. He could open them later. Then, he entered the world ring beside him and browsed through it. Then, he raised his brows slightly with a surprised expression. This was because he had discovered that this fellow's world ring actually contained a large number of resources. Even though it could not compare to the resources of the Shadow Clan's treasury world that he had just obtained, it was still 1/10 of the total. This was not a resource that an ordinary true God-tier advanced grade God Spirit could possess. Zhou Zhou calculated in his heart and came to a conclusion. So this is a backup racial resource of the Shadow Clan. It was secretly preserved by the patriarchs of the past generations. The purpose of keeping it is to prevent the Shadow Clan from being wiped out one day. With this racial resource, the Shadow Clan has the possibility of rising again in the future. Before the decisive battle between Aces and me, he handed this spare racial resource to Jakro. It seems that he did indeed have a backup plan. What a pity. Jakro didn't run away. This spare racial resource still fell into my hands. Even though Zhou Zhou said that it was a pity, he still threw it into the king's treasure box in his body. After a while, before Baiyun arrived, an unexpected friend in Zhou Zhou's personal terminal sent him a message. The Queen of the Elven Empire, Elizariel, had sent a message to him. The content of the message was very simple. But it was also very shocking. The Elven Empire had officially started the Divine Kingdom battle for throne, against the Behemoth Divine Kingdom. Once it succeeded, the Elven Empire would fulfill the last condition to advance to a beginner Divine Kingdom and officially advance to a beginner-level Divine Kingdom Lord faction. It didn't matter if he failed. History doesn't keep track of losers. The Behemoth Divine Kingdom seemed to have been prepared. In the face of the Elven Empire's sudden war, they did not panic at all. They had long prepared their troops and waited for the other party to ascend the door. Currently, both sides were fighting at the border city of the Behemoth Divine Kingdom, the extraordinary tier regional territory, Behemoth City. In the first battle, both sides directly invested more than 100 billion soldiers and hundreds of god spirits to fight. Both sides even sent out a true god tier to engage in a preliminary battle. Obviously, both sides wanted to make a good start by winning their first battle. How dangerous is it to go against an elementary divine kingdom with an empire? I'll wonder if the Elven Empire will succeed. Zhou Zhou lamented in his heart. He wanted to join in the fun. He didn't have any support for either side in this war. There was naturally no need to mention the behemoth divine kingdom. There was no enmity between them. It had never provoked him, and he did not want to provoke it. Even though the Elven Empire had a good relationship with him, ever since he rejected Octavel's request to send troops, his relationship with the Elven Empire had entered an awkward situation. Under such circumstances, whether the other party won or not was not good news for him. To Zhou Zhou, the most suitable outcome would be for both sides to suffer losses in this battle. This way, he might be able to benefit from it. At this moment, Elizariel requested for Zhou Zhou's help. She also said that as long as Zhou Zhou agreed to help, the day the Elven Empire was built, they could conclude an eternal alliance treaty with the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Under this treaty, as long as there was no internal strife between the two sides, it was basically comparable to the relationship between brothers. A future divine kingdom had made such a request to Zhou Zhou. Under normal circumstances, with Zhou Zhou's current strength and influence, it was more than enough to help the Elven Empire. However, Zhou Zhou still refused. The Elven Queen did not lose her poise after Zhou Zhou refused. After saving that it was fine, she did not say anything else. Zhou Zhou looked at Elise Ariel's series of messages with a very calm expression. The Behemoth Divine Kingdom is a true Divine Kingdom Lord faction. Who knows what trump cards they have hidden? What kind of allies do they have? Perhaps they have allies from other Divine Kingdom Lord factions. In addition, I have no enmity with the Behemoth Divine Kingdom. Even if I send troops to the Elven Empire with help, my reputation won't be too good. After all, we're not dealing with the Scarlet Lords. If you had attacked a Scarlet Divine Kingdom Lord faction, I might have sent out my troops. Moreover, you're asking me for help again at this time. I'm afraid the situation on your side isn't as smooth as you imagined, right? The Behemoth Empire is probably more difficult to deal with than you imagine, right? Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. He thought for a moment and sent someone to call Wu Tu over. Your subject, Wu Tu, greets His Majesty. After Wu Tu came over, he bowed respectfully. When Zhou Zhou saw this, he briefly explained the matter between the Elven Empire and the Behemoth Divine Kingdom to the other party. Then, you, the mysterious caravan, and the Starfire mercenary team will gather information on the battle between the two sides. If there's any new information, send it to the capital immediately and tell me. Yes, Your Majesty. Wu Tu said respectfully. You may leave. Zhou Zhou nodded and said. Wu Tu took his leave. Bai Yun quickly walked in not long after he left. Chapter 1070 Tarot Call is on the right path. Persuade Surrender. 1070 Tarot Call is on the right path. Persuade Surrender. Your Majesty, all the racial resources that the Shadow Clan can take away have been collected. The loots have also been sorted out. Regarding the captives, according to Madame Wenya's statistics, we have captured about 612 billion people of foreign race soldiers, 216 god spirits, and 2 true god tiers. As for the royal family of the Shadow Clan, we've also captured them all. Currently, they're gathered in the side hall of the Temple of Shadows with the ministers and god spirits of the Shadow Clan. They're under the joint custody of Your Excellency Lu and Your Excellency White River. Your Majesty, do you want to take a look? Bai Yun asked respectfully. Are they willing to submit to our Blazing Sun Kingdom? Zhou Zhou asked. Most of them are willing to submit, but only a few stubborn old officials are unwilling to accept surrender for the time being. Bai Yun said. Let's go take a look. Zhou Zhou thought for a moment and said. His kingdom would rule this territory in the future after all. He had to let these old ministers see who their new master was. Otherwise, he would have already conquered this territory. In the end, the former owner of this territory did not even see him, the lord in charge of the offensive. It felt strange. "Your Majesty, please follow me." Bai Yun nodded. Then, he brought Zhou Zhou and Tarokal to the side hall. On the way, Tarokal suddenly whispered, "Your Majesty, perhaps I can try to persuade those stubborn old ministers. To be able to become the higher-ups of our shadow clan, they are not ordinary people. It would be a pity to kill them. If they can be convinced by me and serve His Majesty, it can be considered their honor and luck. They can also add bricks and tiles to His Majesty's country." "Sure." Zhou Zhou nodded slightly. Soon, the three of them arrived at the side hall. Even though this was a side hall, it actually occupied a huge area and could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people. However, when he thought of this, he felt that it was normal for the Shadow Clan, who had mastered the extraordinary tier power, and even the gods who had mastered the laws. At this moment, there were more than 100,000 shadows and a small number of people of foreign races in the huge side hall. They were all detained by the Blazing Sun Kingdom's soldiers and even god spirits. No one dared to move. When they saw Zhou Zhou arrive, all the soldiers and god spirits immediately said respectfully in unison, "Greetings, Your Majesty." "Greetings, Patriarch." Zhou Zhou nodded. Then, he walked straight to the Temple Lord's seat at the highest point at the front and sat down. He looked at the Shadow Clan royal family, ministers, and god spirits below. "This king won't say any nonsense. Those who are willing to join our Blazing Sun Kingdom will naturally be rewarded with authority, status, wealth, and strength. You will have everything you want as long as you are loyal and capable. As for those who are unwilling to join my kingdom, it's simple. We are enemies to begin with. If we lose and are unwilling to surrender, please die." Zhou Zhou said calmly. His voice revealed an unquestionable attitude. The expressions of the Shadow Clan emperors, ministers, and god spirits immediately changed when they heard this. They could tell that the regal in front of them was not just talking. He had plenty of talents under him. It didn't matter what kind of powerhouse, genius, or master you were. As long as you weren't willing to submit, he could really kill you. "I'm willing to surrender." "Please don't kill me, Your Majesty." "I'm willing to surrender too. I've admired His Majesty for a long time. It's my dream to become His Majesty's subject." "Your Majesty, before you came, I already said that I was willing to join the Blazing Sun Kingdom. This subject hates war and hopes to create peace. The peaceful environment of the Sun Kingdom created by His Majesty is known by all races. You are the wise ruler that I dream of submitting to." "Humph. So what if I die? You're just a small human lord. Even if you become a regal, don't even think about making me, Zella, submit to you." "Well said. My division is a god spirit nurtured by the Shadow Clan. You, an enemy who destroyed my Shadow Clan, still want me to surrender? Dream on. I wish I could eat your flesh and blood raw and devour your soul." Zhou Zhou's words immediately caused all sorts of reactions from these old Shadow Clan officials. Some immediately surrendered, wishing that they were born into the Blazing Sun Kingdom. There were also some who looked like they hated their country. They stared at Zhou Zhou as if they were looking at their mortal enemies. "How dare you!" Before he could do anything, he saw Tarokal standing up angrily and waving his right hand. Whoosh, 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 a large amount of dark gray shadow divine power transformed into shadow blades that shot towards these old Shadow Clan officials who were cursing. Most of these former Shadow Clan officials had not even reached the level of a god spirit. Only a small portion of them were god spirits. How could they withstand the attack of a true god-tier advance grade? He was killed in one strike. The surrounding Shadow Clan officials, regardless of whether they were willing to surrender or not, were shocked and did not dare to speak after seeing this scene. They were terrified. Zhou Zhou's expression was calm. He didn't say anything and only gave Tarokal an appreciative look. Tarokal was delighted when he saw this. Then, he immediately puffed out his chest and took out the shadow token to show these old Shadow Clan officials. Finally, he uttered solemnly, "You should know me and the Shadow Divine token in my hand. Not bad. Now, I, the second true god tier of the Shadow Clan, have by now grasped the Shadow Divine token and become the current master of the Shadow Clan. Patriarch Aces has by now died in battle. But the Shadow Clan can't be without a master for a day, and we can't cut off the inheritance of our Shadow Clan because of this. Otherwise, how can we be worthy of the Shadow Clan ancestry in our bodies? We're sinners to begin with, but now, the common people's regal is willing to forgive our past mistakes and even allow us to become part of the Blazing Sun Kingdom and become normal citizens of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. How magnanimous and bold is that? How can you be so stubborn? Don't forget that in the beginning, we were the ones who had to give the order to stop the humans from retreating to the primordial world. His Majesty is already magnanimous enough to ignore your past. Are you really only happy when you're about to die?" The old ministers of the Shadow Clan fell silent as soon as these words were spoken. When Tarokal saw this, he knew that it was time. Hence, he raised the divine shadow token in his hand and uttered solemnly to them, "I command you as the master of the Shadow Clan. Join the Blazing Sun Kingdom and become a subject of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Offer all your loyalty to His Majesty. His Majesty is a supreme regal and serves His Majesty. Our ancestors won't blame us. Instead, they will take it as glory. If you don't listen now, when will you?" Towards the end, he shouted. The ministers of the Shadow Clan below looked at each other and knelt down. "We are willing to be His Majesty's subjects. We are willing to surrender." The old officials of the Shadow Clan uttered one after another. When Tarokal saw this scene, he nodded in his heart. Then, he quietly retreated behind Zhou Zhou and left the scene in front of him. Zhou Zhou nodded slightly when he saw this. He could tell that actually, these guys did not want to die. They just needed a way out. Now that the current patriarch, Tarokal, had personally come to influence them, it was equivalent to giving them a way out. They were naturally willing to surrender. "You'll be glad of your selection today in the future," he said. He made some arrangements for the Shadow Clan and set up a spatial teleportation array after all. Then, he led the army and loots to board the Galaxy Leader and return to the Blazing Sun Kingdom. Chapter 1071 The Function of the Master God Tier Divine Artifact 1071 The Function of the Master God Tier Divine Artifact Zhou Zhou returned to the Blazing Sun Palace with Li Ya after they reached the Blazing Sun Kingdom. "How do you feel today?" Zhou Zhou held Li Ya's hand and asked with a smile before she returned to Cunning Palace. "The war between races is too terrifying. It's completely different from the war between kingdoms I've seen before." Li Ya recalled the race she had seen on the Galaxy Leader. It involved the battle of more than 1 trillion soldiers, the battle of thousands of god spirits, and the battle of dozens of true god tiers. It left a deep impression on her. The ultimate goal of the Kingdom War is to expand the territory. There's no hope of not leaving it for the subjects of this country. Even if the subjects don't have their own country, they can still go to other countries to reunite with their people. But a war between races is a war of pure genocide. After the war between races, only one of the two races can live in this world openly. The loser can only become the slave of the victor, or even be exterminated without leaving a single one alive. The life forms of the races that are lucky enough to survive will not only lose their country, they will even lose their race. They will become the loneliest living beings in the world. Just as Zhou Zhou thought that Li Ya was going to be more sentimental, he saw her expression suddenly become more determined. She grabbed Zhou Zhou's hands and said seriously, "Your Majesty, you must eliminate all evil in the future. Don't leave any members of the enemy race who are unwilling to surrender alive. I will take care of the internal affairs so that your majesty will have no worries and focus on fighting for our country and even the human race. I hope that we humans will never experience what the Shadow Clan experienced today. Anyone who dares to show their fangs to us humans deserves to die, even if they are exterminated by us. Zhou Zhou looked at Liya, who was looking at him with a determined expression. Then, a smile appeared on his face. He felt gratified. Upon hearing the first half of her words, he thought that she couldn't bear to see such a scene of genocide. He realized that he had guessed wrongly after hearing the latter half of her words. How could the woman he had taken a fancy to not understand his position in such a matter and feel pity for him? One had to know that as the princess of a country, she had experienced the destruction of the Aurora Kingdom. She had even been stabbed to death by an assassin from an enemy country. If not for Zhou Zhou, be it Liya or her father's Aurora Kingdom, they would probably have been destroyed by the Taiyan Kingdom long ago. Not to mention that Liya had experienced a huge incident like the retreat of the human race to the primordial world that affected the entire human race. With such an experience, she naturally would not sympathize with these enemies who had bared their fangs at the human race and even wanted to exterminate the human race. Sympathy. It would be more accurate to say that she wished they could all die. Don't worry, Yair. Your husband has never been lenient with his enemies. I will never let my kingdom and my human race leave behind any future troubles because of my mercy. Zhou Zhou held her in his arms and stroked her hair. I have faith in your majesty. Liya said gently in Zhou Zhou's arms. The two of them stood together and whispered to each other for a while before Liya left reluctantly. Zhou Zhou did not covet the love affair. After bidding farewell to Liya, he went straight to the Blazing Sun Palace. Zhou Zhou sat on the throne and was looking at a treasured saber in his hand in the meeting hall at the Blazing Sun Palace. This treasured saber was half the height of a person, and its entire body was dark purple. At the same time, the surface was covered in a layer of dark purple nomological engravings, revealing the profound and cold nomological mysteries. The blade of his shone brightly. Zhou Zhou looked over and seemed to be able to vaguely observe a supreme great lunar netherworld on the surface of the blade. There were all sorts of elemental creatures and ghosts fighting coldly and decisively inside. They seemed to have been born to kill. All kinds of killing manuals appeared endlessly, precisely forming a race civilization with killing as the core. It was the main divine artifact that he had acquired from Aces, the great lunar extinction lifeless demonic blade. Previously, it was inconvenient to take it out to check when he was in the territory of the Shadow Clan. This was a Master God tier divine artifact after all. It would definitely cause the globe to change once it appeared. It might even attract the attention of a top-notch Master God tier. Not every Master God tier God spirit possessed a Master God tier divine artifact. Before he dealt with Uriel, he had no intention of exposing the fact that he already had a Master God tier divine artifact. Now that he had returned to his divine kingdom, he did not have so many scruples. No matter how strong a Master God tier God spirit was, it was impossible for him to see through what he was doing in the divine kingdom. His divine kingdom was in the supreme domain after all. Even the supreme God realm and the great lunar and great solar regals would not dare to casually pry into what was happening in the supreme domain. Let me take a good look at what's so good about this Master God tier divine artifact. Zhou Zhou looked over expectantly and a text notification appeared. Divine artifact name, the Great Lunar Extinction Lifeless Demonic Blade, Divine Artifact Grade, Master God tier Intermediate Grade, Divine Artifact Nomological Law 1, Great Lunar Exterminating Boundless Universe. The Great Lunar Extinction Lifeless Demonic Blade contains a boundless universe with the two complete nomological laws, Great Lunar and Exterminating, as the core. Furthermore, the existing beings inside precisely used the Great Lunar and Exterminating nomological laws as the core to create an ancient race civilization called Lifeless. They also call themselves the lifeless race. As the master of the great lunar extinction lifeless demonic blade, one could mobilize all the resources in the boundless universe at will, including God spirits, extraordinary tier life forms, ordinary life forms, and other intelligent existences. The existing beings and God spirits of this boundless universe all contain the mark of the main divine artifact in their origin cores. They will be loyal to the owner of the great lunar extinction lifeless demonic blade, and the owner will be provided with endless and pure power of faith. Divine Artifact Nomological Law 2, Great Lunar Ultimate Divine Destruction Origin Saber Chi. By using the Great Lunar Extinction Lifeless Demonic Blades, Great Lunar Ultimate Divine Destruction Origin Saber Chi, it can release an existence that can kill master gods and advance grades. It can easily destroy any world. The specific power depended on the number of Great Lunar Ultimate Divine Destruction Origin Saber Chi used. The more there were, the stronger the power. Otherwise, the weaker it was. The Great Lunar Ultimate Divine Destruction Origin Saber Chi came from the will of the dead existences in the Great Lunar Exterminating Boundless Universe. The more existences that died in the boundless universe, the stronger the will of the dead existences. The more Great Lunar Ultimate Divine Destruction Origin Saber Chi they could collect, the more they could not exterminate the life forms of the various races in the globe in order to collect a large number of Great Lunar Ultimate Divine Destruction Origin Saber Chi at once. Otherwise, they would not collect too much Great Lunar Ultimate Divine Destruction Origin Saber Chi. Divine Artifact Nomological Law 3, Great Lunar Origin. The Great Lunar Extinction Lifeless Demonic Blade contains the complete origin of the Great Lunar Law Origin. The owner of the Master God Tier Divine Artifact can enter with his soul to comprehend the mysteries of the Great Lunar Law at any time. Divine Artifact Nomological Law 4, Extinction Origin. The Great Lunar Extinction Lifeless Demonic Blade contains the complete origin of the Extinction Law. The owner of the main artifact can enter it with his soul and understand the mystery of the Extinction Law at any time. Prompt, it can recognize its master. The lowest level is the will-like light realm. After reading it, Zhou couldn't help but gasp. Chapter 1072 Great Lunar Exterminating Boundless Universe. Lifeless Race. Good God. This was actually a Master God Tier Divine Artifact with two complete laws at the same time. Furthermore, it was the Great Lunar Law and the Extermination Law that were extremely powerful in combat. As expected of a Master God Tier Intermediate Grade Divine Artifact. This alone didn't disappoint him. In the future, if he or his subordinates desired to comprehend the Great Lunar Law or the Extinction Law more easily, they could directly enter the main divine artifact's nomological origin to comprehend it. It was definitely 1,000 times simpler than comprehending it in the outside world. Other than that, there was also a boundless universe with these two laws as the core. There was nothing strange about a divine artifact containing a world. Many true God-tier divine artifacts and Master God-tier divine artifacts had their own worlds that were exclusive to the divine artifacts to accommodate their own laws. At the same time, having his own world of divine artifacts was also very helpful to the development of the divine artifact itself. For example, his Sword of New Dimension creation naturally contained a world origin. Later on, after Zhou invested all kinds of treasures, the world origin had officially opened up a middle world and was rapidly developing in the direction of the boundless universe. Its grade had already advanced from the original true God-tier intermediate grade divine artifact to a true God-tier advanced grade divine artifact. When the middle world inside it officially evolved into the boundless universe, there was a high chance that it would evolve into a master divine artifact. However, this would take a long time. Speaking of which, Zhou was not surprised that this Master God-tier intermediate grade divine artifact had its own boundless universe. What surprised Zhou was that it had already formed a complete and mature race civilization in the boundless universe. Lifeless race, even though this race sounds strange, as long as they are a complete race, then their value is immeasurable. Furthermore, the Great Lunar Extinction Lifeless Demonic Blade is a Master God tier divine artifact with a boundless universe. Those who can be called an ancient race in the boundless universe will definitely give birth to existences at the true God tier level. It's impossible to be a Master God tier. Once a Master God tier existence is born in the boundless universe, they will immediately be expelled from the boundless universe. And I can command all the lives in the Great Lunar Exterminating Boundless Universe at will. Doesn't that mean that all the true God tier, God spirits, and even all the extraordinary tier soldiers in the boundless universe can be used by me? Zhou Zhou's eyes shone brightly. If that was the case, his strength and influence would skyrocket because of this Master Divine artifact. Good God! I originally considered that I had only obtained a normal Master God tier divine artifact. I didn't expect to obtain a super military camp. Moreover, it's a super military camp that is completely loyal to me and can provide me with an endless stream of faith power. Zhou Zhou muttered to himself. This trip to the Shadow Clan was simply profitable. Not to mention, this Master God tier intermediate grade divine artifact actually had a super offensive law skill from the Great Lunar Ultimate Divine Destruction Origin Saber Chi. A full-strength Great Lunar Ultimate Divine Destruction Origin Saber Chi could even kill an existence at Master God tier advanced grade. When he considered of this, he could not help but hold his breath. Master God tier advanced grade. It was definitely a top-notch expert in the myriad worlds. It was also the strongest existence who could interfere in the Lord of all races battle. Existences at the Supreme God realm and above could not personally interfere with the Lord of all races competition. Which meant, as long as he could use this Master God divine artifact normally, he would basically have nothing to fear when facing super clan protecting experts of all races in the future. In fact, all races should be afraid of me. I will run to the door and kill the super expert opposite me with a single strike if they dare to anger me. He considered to himself. However, he woke up in no time. No, I still can't be too arrogant. The reason why top races are called top races is definitely not only because they have the protection of Master God tier experts. More importantly, they have an incomparably deep racial heritage and endless racial trump cards. It's true that the Supreme God realm can't attack casually, but it doesn't mean that they can't bring out a Supreme God realm trump card. This Great Lunar Extinction Lifeless Demonic Blade can at most give me the ability to protect myself and make other people of foreign races fear me in the future. However, it definitely doesn't give me the ability to run amok among the myriad races in the world. I still need to be careful. The matter of tyranny should be done within the lords of the myriad races. Zhou Zhou thought to himself. Then, he viewed at the last line of notifications on the Master God divine artifact. Does it need my will to recognize me as its master? Fortunately, I can. Zhou Zhou did not hesitate and immediately sent his will into the Great Lunar Extinction Lifeless Demonic Blade. His willpower had already reached the standard, and he was a God spirit of the Lord's laws. He could easily obtain the approval of the spirit of the Master God tier divine artifact and successfully recognized him as its master. However, since his realm was insufficient, he was temporarily unable to use most of the main functions of this Master God tier divine artifact. There were only two main abilities that he could use normally. The first was that he could summon the God spirits in the Great Lunar Exterminating Boundless Universe and summon them from the Master God tier's Boundless Universe to his territory to fight for him. The second was to enter the nomological origin of the Master God tier divine artifact with his divine sense and comprehend the Great Lunar Law and the Extermination Law inside. Zhou Zhou was not excited about the latter. It was only comprehending Master God tier laws after all. He could easily bring out two Master God tier books of the God Spirit to achieve the same or even better effect. He still needed to comprehend the former. The latter was directly pouring law comprehension into the user's brain. What he viewed forward to the most was naturally to use the functions of the God spirits in the boundless universe. How many god spirits are there in the great lunar exterminating boundless universe? And how many true god tiers god spirits are there? Zhou Zhou questioned curiously. The great lunar extinction lifeless demonic blade vibrated slightly and sent a message to him. After Zhou Zhou understood this message, he raised his eyebrows slightly. You're saying that there are a total of 11 true god tiers and more than 1,500 god spirits of the lifeless race in your boundless universe? He asked. This master god tier divine artifact shook again to express its affirmation. When Zhou Zhou heard that, his eyes revealed a hint of doubt. According to the artifact spirit of the main divine artifact of the great lunar extinction lifeless demonic blade, the living beings in this boundless universe adhere to the principle of racial development. Only by killing and defeating their enemies could they become true experts. Therefore, even though there were not many life forms in this world, almost all of them who survived were experts, and the probability of them becoming gods was extremely high. However, that didn't sound like a lot, about the same strength as the Shadow Clan. The great lunar extinction lifeless demonic blade appeared to have sensed Zhou Zhou's thoughts. It shook the blade in dissatisfaction before sending another message. After Zhou Zhou learned of this information, his body trembled as he hurriedly said, "You're saying that your 11 true god tiers god spirits have reached true god tier advanced grade, while those 1,500 odd god spirits are all high tier deity level god spirits. There aren't any god spirits of other levels?" He widened his eyes. The great lunar extinction lifeless demonic blade trembled slightly again facing his master's doubts. It was very satisfied with Zhou Zhou's reaction while expressing its affirmation. Zhou Zhou viewed incredulous. How is this possible? Chapter 1073 Killing Conference. Uncrowned King, Galamans. How could a complete boundless universe be filled with true god-tier advanced grade god spirits and high-tier deity-level god spirits? What about the other god spirits? They did not even have any at the intermediate grade. Zhou Zhou did not think too much about it and directly raised his doubts with the great lunar extinction lifeless demonic blade. And this master god-tier divine artifact immediately gave Zhou Zhou the answer. According to the artifact spirit of the master god-tier divine artifact, the laws of the great lunar exterminating boundless universe were somewhat similar to the laws of the high continent. By killing enemies, he could obtain slaughter energy to raise his strength. He could even convert the law comprehension into his own law comprehension. This world could be said to be filled with slaughter because of this. Not only did the spirit of the master god-tier divine artifact not stop this trend, he even encouraged this kind of killing behavior in order to allow the laws of this world to grow. For this reason, every 100,000 years, it would hold a killing conference within the world. The conference was divided into 3 competitions. They were the demigod, legendary tier, competition, the high tier deity level competition, and the true god tier performance competition. The 3 participants were legendary level extraordinary individuals, high-tier deity-level god spirits, and true god tier. Only by killing 10,000 legendary tier superhumans or 100 high-tier deity-level god spirits or defeating all the other true gods in these 3 competitions could they win. The winner would not only have an unparalleled status in the boundless universe. Furthermore, the spirit of the master god-tier divine artifact would personally take action and forcefully raise their strength from the legendary tier to the high-tier deity level, or from the high-tier deity level to the true god tier. As for the true god tier, they directly became the king of killers of the great lunar exterminating world. Their status was second only to the artifact spirit of the master god tier divine artifact. It could be said that he had truly reached the heavens in a single step. Such a huge reward naturally made countless members of the lifeless clan scramble like ducks. Even if the price was death, there were countless members of the lifeless clan who were willing to participate. It was fine if he was unwilling to participate. However, his realm would be locked at the legendary tier or high-tier deity level for the rest of his life. He would never be able to advance. The artifact spirit of the Master God Tier Divine Artifact wanted to force these experts to participate in this killing conference. Otherwise, they would forever be mediocre. In fact, not many lifeless race members would refuse to participate in this killing conference. The power of laws had already deeply affected them from the moment they were born. The desire to fight and kill was an instinct that had long been engraved in their genes. No life form or God spirit could reject their instincts. And at the true God Tier level, these existences who had become true God Tier advanced grades rarely killed. This was because the artifact spirit of the Master God Tier Divine Artifact also knew that the limit of its closed-off world was that it was very difficult for a Master God Tier existence to be born. Therefore, in the face of a true God Tier advanced grade God spirit, he would instead reduce the number of times he killed in order to preserve the few true God Tier existences. At most, they would arrange some world activities occasionally so that these true God Tiers could hone their combat skills without endangering their lives. They would maintain their combat state so that they would not forget their identity as a combat race after not fighting for a long time. This was also why in the killing conference, the demigod competition and the high-tier deity level competition were both life or death competitions. When it came to the true God Tier, it became a performance competition. The rules of your world, Zhou smacked his lips but did not say anything. What was this? The Lord of all Races contest in the High Continent was much more intense than the killing conference. Its killing conference only involved the legendary tier, high-tier deity level, and true God Tier levels. As for his Lord of all Races contest, it involved all the living beings of the myriad races. From ordinary people to the Supreme Will and the Crimson Overlord, no one could escape. Your world's laws are indeed a little strange. There are only high-tier deity-level God spirits and true God Tier advanced grade God spirits. Zhou sighed. The world was so big that there were all kinds of strange things. The great lunar extinction lifeless demonic blade was silent for a while before sending a message to him. You said that the new killing conference is currently in progress. Do you want to come in and take a look? Zhou raised his eyebrows and asked with interest. Zhou raised his eyebrows and asked with interest. Let's go and take a look. Zhou said without hesitation. Anyway, there was nothing important tonight. It was not a big problem to watch for a while. Then, his divine body disappeared from the throne with a thought. Great lunar exterminating boundless universe. There was a starry world the size of the middle world here. An incomparably huge hemispherical arena floated in the universe. The area he occupied was comparable to the surface area of hundreds of suns. At this moment, on the vast arena, two true God Tier existences were fighting crazily. Annaba, it's only been 30,000 years since we last met, but your speed seems to have slowed down a little. Have you exhausted all your divine factors by enjoying your harem every day for the past few years? A wild young man in a vigorous blood-red battle suit with his hair scattered wildly behind him said with a maniacal laugh after sending another true God Tier advanced grade God spirit flying with a punch. Takta, don't be smug. You're a new true God Tier. Who gave you the guts to shout in front of me? I've seen the destruction of the world and killed more enemies than you have. I'll definitely defeat King Killer and win the killing conference this time. Another tall man with a bare head and muscular body, wearing a tight black combat suit, mocked him without hesitation. Arrogant. So what? The two gods looked at each other coldly and then rushed towards each other brazenly, engaging in a close combat with each other. Every time their bodies collided, they would produce extremely terrifying nomological fluctuations, causing the surrounding spacetime to tremble faintly. If they were fighting in a middle world, the aftershocks of their battle alone would be enough to destroy or even destroy a middle world. And there were as many as 11 such battles and such vast battlefields in the starry sky. Apart from the true God Tier battlefield arena, around him were tens of millions of legendary tier and high-tier deity-level planetary battlefields. More than 100 million legendary tier lifeless clan members and more than 1,000 superior level divine god spirits gathered on their respective planets' battlefields to fight to the death with their opponents. All the lifeless race individuals did not hold back. It was not only because they were members of the lifeless clan who yearned for battle and slaughter, but also because they knew that if they held back in such a battle, the other party would definitely not spare their lives because of their benevolence. Instead, they would take the opportunity to take their own lives. Once they entered the battlefield, they would either die or be instantly killed. This was the rule of the killing conference. Kill. The champion of this killing conference's demigod competition will definitely be me. My family is waiting for me. I can't lose. As long as I survive the killing conference, I can become the ruler of my galaxy. I can overturn the rule of those corrupt people and save my family. All the lifeless race individuals were fighting crazily for their own goals, and the lifeless race members who did not participate in the Slaughter Congress were also watching this grand event in the entire universe through the broadcast. At the highest point of all the arenas, a genuine deity level in full golden armor with only his eyes exposed sat there, looking down at all the participants. Let's fight. Fight to your death. Only the final victor among you can challenge me. I will give you the chance to challenge me, the uncrowned king of the Slaughter Conference, Galamans. He muttered softly to himself. His eyes were filled with an incomparably terrifying desire to fight. Chapter 1074 Galaman's Origin. Just as this uncrowned king was looking forward to the appearance of his opponent, Zhou was also standing with a white-robed boy who was less than a meter tall at a spot where the life forms of this world could not observe him. Is he the strongest true god you mentioned, Galamans, who won 12 consecutive championships in the killing conference? Zhou looked at him and asked curiously. Yes, master. The white-robed boy, who was also the master god-tier divine artifact spirit of the great lunar extinction lifeless demonic blade, said indifferently. He was not deliberately dissatisfied with Zhou. Instead, as the artifact spirit of the master god divine artifact that controlled the great lunar law and the law of extinction, he was destined to not have too many other emotions. And facing his master who knew everything about him, he would not put on any unnecessary disguises. When this true god tier was at the legendary tier, he had already grasped a law understanding comparable to a top-notch high-tier deity level. Back then, he won all the battles and became the champion of the demigod competition at the killing conference. After becoming a high-tier deity level, he quickly raised his comprehension of laws to the true god tier. Then, he became the champion of the high-tier deity level competition in an invincible manner and became an advanced grade true god. After that, he experienced 100,000 years of cultivation and participated in the true god tier exhibition competition of the next killing conference. Then, in the exhibition competition, he defeated the other 10 true god tiers without any suspense and became king of killings. After that, he has experienced a total of 12 killing conferences. In these 12 killing conferences, he has always defeated the true god tier who dared to challenge him without any suspense. He has always been the champion of the true god tier exhibition competition. He is ranked first in terms of talent and strength among all the lifeless clan members I've seen. The artifact spirit sighed. Zhou nodded. He glanced at the other party, and the other party's attribute information appeared in his eyes. Soon, he had seen through this fellow's background. Indeed, the potential of a master god tier advanced grade. Zhou was surprised. This was an innate master god tier advanced grade possessor with potential. They weren't the advanced grade master gods in his territory who had relied on the sword of Xian Yuan, the Sun Moon Star Sword, the Book of the God Spirit and other treasures and talents to level up. Even though there was no difference between the two, it would still make Zhou think highly of him. Your world has given birth to a treasure. Zhou smiled and glanced at the artifact spirit of the master god tier divine artifact. It's good that it's useful to master. The artifact spirit was very obedient when it spoke and did things, but its eyes and expression were very indifferent, making it look very cute. The artifact spirit was very obedient when it spoke and did things, but its eyes and expression were very indifferent, making it look very cute. Later, this king will give you this world a few master god tier level nomological supplements to nourish your world. Zhou Zhou laughed and said generously. Thank you, master. The white-robed boy's indifferent eyes showed some fluctuations, and he finally said happily. Zhou Zhou smiled. He thought for a moment and said, from today onwards, I'll call you Lifeless Boy. It's not nice to call you an artifact spirit. Thank you for the name, master. Lifeless Boy said happily. Zhou Zhou nodded and asked, how many true god tier and high tier deity levels can I take away from you? Your Majesty can take them all. However, I hope your Majesty won't take the other extraordinaires away for the time being. Firstly, most of the world's energy in this world is condensed on their bodies. If His Majesty takes away all the extraordinary individuals below the God Spirit level, the great lunar exterminating boundless universe will immediately enter a weakened state because of the world's energy leakage. My main divine artifact will also immediately fall into a weakened state, and there will even be a risk of its grade being reduced. Secondly, no one below the God Spirit level has the physique to ascension. Only the God Spirit's divine body is qualified to ascend. If Master takes them away, their strength, condition, and even their lives will be severely affected. Thirdly, superhumans below the God Spirit level can quickly improve through killing in my world. It's even faster than killing in the supreme law environment outside. In addition, the time-flow ratio between my boundless universe and His Majesty's supreme continent is 10,000 to 1. If you place these extraordinary humans in my world to kill and advance, I can provide you with an endless stream of God Spirit level experts to serve you in the future. Well, do as you say. Zhou Zhou thought for a moment and agreed readily. In any case, he didn't lack ordinary soldiers below the God Spirit level. What he lacked were God Spirits and true God tier existences. The lifeless child's request didn't go against his requirements. Thank you for your understanding, Master. Lifeless Boy said respectfully. Where did you learn so much etiquette at such a young age? Zhou Zhou rebuked jokingly. I'm not young anymore. Besides, I learned these etiquettes from these lifeless race. Lifeless child elucidated seriously. All right. When Zhou Zhou listened this, he waved his hand and did not want to care anymore. Then, he continued looking at the competition in front of him. In the next month, which was about 25 minutes in the real world, Zhou Zhou stayed in the great lunar exterminating boundless universe. The lifeless child and him had watched most of the competitions as ordinary spectators. They had a higher grasp of the lifeless clan and their combat talent. This lifeless race is indeed an ancient race with a unique combat civilization. They actually imprinted all the laws they comprehended into their physical genes to create a unique nomological combat body. They integrated the power of the laws into simple melee combat. This makes their punches and kicks have the power to shake the world and even break the laws. The combat method that uses close combat as the core has also given rise to combat uniforms, combat weapons, undying war potions, combination combat techniques, martial arts divine books, and various other races and civilization inheritances of the lifeless race. There are 3 commoner professions in the High Continent. Martial artists are one of them. The martial arts civilization of the lifeless clan can be seen as the path to advancement for top-notch martial artists. Zhou Zhou pondered as he sat in the audience. Naturally, he performed and not forget that besides the top rare professions such as the Lord of the End, he also had a martial artist profession. This profession gazed ordinary, but it was precisely because it was ordinary that it had been walked by many life forms and even God spirits, opening up the furthest path. In reality, many god spirits, true god tiers, and even master god tiers had walked the path of martial artists. Previously, he had been focused on cultivating the Lord's laws, so he hadn't been able to put in much effort on the path of a martial artist. Now that he observed the combat-type civilization of the lifeless race, he suddenly had some new ideas about this path. If I combine the Lord's law with the martial artist profession path, what will I create? Zhou boldly thought. Before he could think for long, he listened the surrounding audience suddenly cheer excitedly. Master! The champion of the high-tier deity-level competition has been born. He has already received my blessing and advanced to an advanced grade true god spirit. Next, this champion will challenge the last true god tier to seize the other party's strength level. This is because the limit of my boundless universe can't accommodate too many high-level true god tier experts. Therefore, only one true god tier advanced grade can exist between the two. The other fellow can only die or give up his strength and surrender. After the challenge ends, the true god tier exhibition competition will officially begin. Lifeless child's indifferent voice sounded. Zhou was stunned for a moment before his interest was piqued. Let's go and watch this true god tier exhibition match. He smiled. He was not interested in the so-called challenge. However, he was very interested in the true god tier exhibition competition. The strongest true god tier. Let me see how strong this subordinate of mine is. And then, let this king try too. Zhou admitted that his hands were itching. Chapter 1075 The True God Tier Challenger for the Last Place. Killing Conference, King Killer Selection Arena Number 11. This arena was the combined size of more than 1,000 suns. Moreover, at the outermost area of this arena and the seats of the audience, there was also a layer of world walls set up to prevent the aftershock of the true God tier battle from leaking out and hurting the world outside the arena and the audience in the audience around the arena. At this moment, a snow-white and beautiful member of the ice demon race, Siwa, who was called a superstar in the universe by the billions of life forms in the great lunar exterminating boundless universe, was standing on the host stage, explaining the competition to the audience in the audience and the audience in front of the cameras. Hello, everyone. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm your flower of ice and blood, Siwa. Did you look forward to my appearance when you didn't see me earlier? This high-tier deity-level advanced grade beauty from the ice-blood demon race boldly displayed her charm to all the audience the moment she arrived. Whether it was the VIP audience in the audience seats or the audience in front of the video broadcast, they all cheered, regardless of gender. Clearly, he was a superstar who was loved by both men and women. Siwa then said a few words to warm up the atmosphere. Seeing that the atmosphere was almost done, he started the official commentary without any hesitation. Next, our newly advanced true God tier God spirit, the true God of truce and war, Xia Luo will fight against our previous true God, the true God of destruction and killing, Aluka. Next, our newly advanced true God, the true God of self-cut and war, Xia Luo will fight against our previous true God, the true God of destruction and killing, Aluka. When the two of them appeared, the billions of viewers present and the trillions of viewers in front of the broadcast screen cheered. In particular, Xia Luo and the clansmen from Aluka's hometown were shouting crazily. The true God of destruction and mountain god, Aluka, heard the billions of spectators cheering for him. He immediately raised his hands and closed his eyes, enjoying the admiration of the audience for him. On the other hand, Xia Luo had a cold expression on his face. However, his right hand, which was holding the weapon in his hand, tightened its grip. At this moment, the host's voice sounded again. He first introduced Aluka's basic situation. Then, when he introduced Xia Luo, his voice was clearly a few pitches higher with a very excited tone. Ladies and gentlemen. This contestant Xia Luo in front of us is not simple. That's because he's not only the strongest high-tier deity-level champion in the high-tier deity-level competition, but he's also the strongest demigod champion in this year's Killing Conference. That's right. Contestant Xia Luo first won the demigod tournament through the demigod tournament and advanced to the high-tier deity-level elementary grade. Through the authority of he as a high-tier deity-level god spirit, he also participated in the high-tier deity-level tournament. Furthermore, with his astonishing strength, he defeated the previous strongest high-tier deity level and successfully obtained the supreme strength and status of a true god-tier advanced grade. Yes. Our contestant jumped up 2 times in a row and became a true god tier. And just a month ago, he was only a legendary tier superhuman. He didn't even meet a god spirit. How unbelievable is this? Siwa said excitedly. His excitement also stirred the emotions of the other audience. They also began to shout Xia Luo's name. In the face of this even more frenzied cheer, Xia Luo still maintained a calm expression and carefully examined the enemy in front of him. In the face of this situation, Aluka became a little angry. He was just a junior who had jumped up twice in a row and did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. There were actually so many audience members in the audience who were willing to flatter him. His eyes darkened. He decided to teach this guy a lesson. Alright, let's cut to the chase. Let's begin the next challenge. If both sides feel that they can't win against each other, they can choose to surrender and give up this competition to save their lives. Your Excellency can fight to your heart's content before the outcome is determined. There's no need to have any scruples. Because the lifeless master will protect you. Siwa retracted his smile and stated solemnly. Then, he left the arena. Now, the challenge will officially begin. Siwa's tone came from the starry sky. These 2 new true god tiers and the last true god tier immediately rushed towards each other and collided in the blink of an eye. Rumble. The starry sky reverberated with the continuous loud sounds of battle and incomparably intense and crazy cheers. Half a day later, the King Life Killer Selection Arena number 11. Siwa slowly descended from the sky and looked at Xia Luo, who had fallen to the ground and was no longer breathing, with a face full of regret and pity. What a pity! Our newly advanced true god, Your Excellency Xia Luo, did not defeat Aluka as he wished and successfully achieved 3 consecutive jumps in the contest to stabilize his position as a true god. In terms of strength, Your Excellency Aluka, the new true god of the previous Killing Conference, is indeed superior. Let us congratulate Your Excellency Aluka. He has successfully defended the true god tier that the lifeless master bestowed upon him, becoming the final winner of this true god tier challenge tournament. Siwa cheered loudly. At the same time, he looked at Your Excellency Aluka with an infatuated expression. Aluka raised his hands and laughed wildly. He displayed the majestic figure of his nomological combat body to the spectators and all the audience in the great lunar exterminating boundless universe. At the same time, he also noticed Siwa's gaze on him. He could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. It seemed that this little beauty would be looking for him tonight. Thinking of this, he laughed even more arrogantly. At the same time, just as Aluka finished his competition, the other true god tiers who were secretly watching the combat also discussed amongst themselves. I've long seen through this guy's personality. He looks carefree on the surface and looks like he needs a beating, but he's actually very smart. He's just using this attitude on the surface to make the other party let down his guard. This stupid spectators has actually fallen into this guy's trap. They're even cheering for that junior. I'm dying of laughter. I'm willing to call Aluka the strongest actor and the best at acting among the true god tier. You're quite good at praising. This Xia Luo isn't simple either. I can sense the aura of the Nirvana Law battle body from him. Nirvana Law battle body. The Law battle body that can continuously reincarnate. Nirvana Law battle body. The Law battle body that can continuously reincarnate. This fellow is really slow-witted. Fighting is a skill between life and death, but this fellow directly abandoned life and death and became an almost immortal existence. He seems to be able to live for a long time, but his true potential has stopped here. That's right. I thought that this guy was even more heaven-defying than Galamans. I didn't expect him to be just a superficial person. There will only be one Galamans. There won't be another. The Supreme God level cultivators fell silent. Some Supreme God level wanted to refute, but when they opened their mouths, they could not find a reason to refute. Chapter 1076 All of you, attack me together. He isn't a true God tier, but a true God among true gods. I'm afraid that in the universe, only your excellency, the lifeless master, can firmly suppress him. It's meaningless to talk about the lifeless master. Ha ha ha, mine. After the challenge, Siwa appeared again after a while. He announced that the upcoming competition would be the True God Tier exhibition competition that everyone was paying attention to. After a long introduction of the True God Tier and the rules of the competition, the 11 true bodies all appeared. From the 11th True God Aluka, the 10th True God Jelos, to the top 3 True Gods, Hidani, Kulis, and Galamans, every time a True God appeared, the entire great lunar exterminating boundless universe would cheer. When the uncrowned king, Galamans, appeared, all the true gods present looked at this strongest true god as if they were facing a great enemy. However, the lifeless race was indeed a combat race. Even though they had experienced the terror of Galamans, none of the true god tier present was afraid of the other party. Instead, all of them were full of fighting spirit. When Zhou saw this, he could not help but click his tongue in wonder. The true god tiers on the high continent where he resided were all high and mighty in order to maintain the mysteriousness of a true god tier. This way, not only would his enemies be afraid of him because of his mysteriousness, but it would also make his believers revere him because of his mysteriousness. This would allow him to better harvest faith and suppress people's hearts. However, in the boundless universe of the lifeless child, these true god tiers were all like superstars. Furthermore, it could be seen that they enjoyed the process of being superstars. Most importantly, even though the true god tier who had become a superstar had shortened the distance between them and the believers, it seemed that not only did it not affect their faith, but it was also beneficial for these true god tiers to harvest the faith of their believers. This can also be considered another way to harvest the power of faith of the believers. Zhou sighed inwardly. Indeed, people still had to walk more and see more different worlds. Only then would they have more comprehension of their own path. In the following period of time, the true god tiers decided the order of the battle by drawing lots. After drawing lots, after 11 days of battle, Galamans once again used his absolute advantage to defend the championship of his 13th Killing Conference True God Tier exhibition match. The strongest true god tier deserved his title. Then, the meeting prepared to hold a ceremony for Galamans to be crowned, so that he would continue to have the supreme status of King of Killers, under the witness of the lifeless master. Next, he'll listen to the will of the lifeless master and bestow, killing, upon your excellency Galamans. Siwa suddenly paused at the end of his sentence. He looked up into the depths of the starry sky in a daze, as if he had heard something unbelievable. Why aren't you continuing? Galamans said in a low voice. Your Excellency, I just received the latest order from the Lord of Lifeless City. The lifeless master said. Siwa swallowed a mouthful of saliva. That his master is about to descend into this world. He also wanted to have some fun with the true god tiers. The true god tier cultivators were in an uproar. All the audience watching the live broadcast were also stunned. The entire great lunar exterminating boundless universe was stirred by this short sentence. What are you talking about? Galamans was also stunned. After a while, he came back to his senses and stared at Siwa. Master of the lifeless master. How can my lord have a master? Furthermore, even if the lifeless master has a master, the lifeless master is already so powerful. How powerful would his master be? How can we play with him? Are you toying with me? Galamans was smart. He immediately guessed that the play the other party was referring to was probably a fight with them. However, even if they joined forces, they were not the lifeless master's match. How could they fight the even more mysterious master of the lifeless master? They wouldn't be able to defeat him even if they attacked together. How would I dare to fool you, Your Excellency? That's indeed what the lifeless master conveyed to me. Siwa felt like crying. Galamans fell silent. He looked at the other true god-tiers. The other true god-tiers also looked at him. How strong is that master? A true god-tier asked boldly. I'll ask. Siwa said nervously. Then, he began to use the ritual to ask. None of the true god-tiers spoke at this moment. Nervous? Naturally, they would be nervous. However, they were also very excited. This was because they could finally come into contact with the outside world. A wider world and realms above the true god tier, all the true god tier cultivators yearned for it. Especially the strongest true god tier, Galamans. He had been invincible in this universe for too long. Beings. However, no true god tier in this universe could satisfy his needs. His chance had arrived. He might have a chance to leave this world and fight an even stronger expert as long as he could recognize the master of the lifeless master. Galaman's breathing became heavier. I've received the decree of the lifeless master, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, the lifeless master, said that his master's strength is low-tier deity level intermediate grade. After Siwa finished speaking, he was stunned. The other true god tiers were also stunned. Low-tier deity level intermediate grade? Could it be that the low-tier deity level intermediate grade in the outside universe is already stronger than the true god tier in our world? That's impossible. How can there be such a ridiculous thing? Could it be that some lucky god spirit in the outside universe accidentally recognized Your Excellency the lifeless master as its master? The true god tiers muttered. As the top existences in the boundless universe, they had already realized that they were living in a master god tier divine artifact, so it was not surprising that they had guessed this. At this moment, as the top existences in the boundless universe, they had already realized that they were living in a master god tier divine artifact, so it was not surprising that they had guessed this. Everyone, sorry to keep you waiting. The true god tiers were shocked and turned to look. A handsome and perfect existence in the Emperor Dragon robe was sitting beside them, drinking the divine drink they had just poured. Tastes good. Zhou commented. Greetings, my lord. Galaman sensed that even though the other party was a low-tier deity level intermediate grade, he could still give a bone-piercing sense of danger. He immediately realized that this person was probably his lord's master. He held back the excitement and ecstasy in his heart as he bowed without hesitation. Even though the other true god tiers were a step slower, they also bowed in succession. Their faces were filled with excitement, wishing they could fight them in the next second. Zhou had already seen many races, but this was the first time he had seen a race as belligerent as the other party. Looks as if you guys can't wait. Then, Zhou raised his right hand and snapped his fingers. Bang! Boom! A world projection that was infinitely close to the boundless universe descended into this world and swept all the true god tier present, as well as all the other messy things, including cameras, into it. Just as the true god tiers reacted, they saw Zhou, who was 200,000 kilometers tall, standing in the universe as if an indomitable giant. He exuded a terrifying aura that was infinitely close to that of a master god tier. Then, without using his true god tier divine artifacts, he just stood there and gazed down at all the true god tiers who were as if ants and the other god spirits who were involved in this world. He opened his mouth and his voice rumbled, shaking the heavens and earth as it spread throughout the entire universe projection. All of you attack me together. Chapter 1077 Heavenly Martial God. Unbreakable Defense. All the true God tier and all the lifeless race audience who saw this scene through the live broadcast were immediately shocked. This Lord deliberately wanted to joke with us before, so he displayed his low-tier deity level intermediate grade strength. Now that he's officially playing with us, he revealed his true strength. The 10th true God tier said hesitantly. The other true God tiers had similar thoughts. His current strength should be the true strength of the master of the lifeless master. Only in this way could he barely be qualified to be the master of the lifeless master, right? At the thought of this, they suddenly felt a little strange. If they were qualified to be the master of the lifeless master with just this strength, then it didn't seem impossible for them. I don't think so. At this moment, Galamans, who had been staring at Zhou, suddenly spoke with a solemn expression. It's not. Then why did this Lord's strength suddenly undergo such a huge change? The third true God tier, Hidani, was stunned for a moment before asking with a frown. The third true God tier, Hidani, was stunned for a moment before asking with a frown. Is it possible, this Lord has some kind of heaven-defying law skill that can directly increase his strength from the low-tier deity level intermediate grade to this level? Galamans took a deep breath and said. How is that possible? How can there be such a heaven-defying law skill? Galamans, are you kidding me? The true God tiers widened their eyes and looked at Galamans in disbelief. But soon, they looked at the terrifying figure of Zhou, who was motionless and quietly waiting for they to attack, and gradually fell silent. They had indeed guessed this possibility, but they just couldn't believe it. In fact, they knew in their hearts that with the other party's identity, there was no need for him to play tricks on him. The other party might really be a low-tier deity-level intermediate grade faction and had only used some kind of heaven-defying law skill. No flaws. At that moment, the second true God tier, Kulis, looked at Zhou's figure with a solemn expression and said, I can't see any flaws in him. When the lifeless race fought, the method they were best at defeating the other party was to observe the flaws in the other party's body and use them to win. The second true God tier, Kulis, was one of the best, second only to Galamans. However, he couldn't see any flaws in the other party at all. Even the laws around the other party were so flawless, as though they were tolerant. I can't see it either. Me too. The other true God tiers also spoke one after another, their expressions gradually turning solemn. During the battle between the true God tiers, they would notice the flaws in the other party's body. Even Galamans did not dare to say that he could not reveal any flaws in the battle. However, this Lord in front of him actually did not have a single flaw. Could this Lord be the legendary heavenly martial God? The third true God tier, Hidani, muttered. The heavenly martial God. That was a realm that all the combatants of the lifeless race pursued with all their might. Even a true God tier walked the path of pursuing the heavenly martial God. The heavenly martial God was to grasp the ultimate existence of martial arts. Their every move was in accordance with the rules of martial arts, especially in battle. It could be said to be natural and flawless. Such existences did not even need to specially learn any martial arts combat skills, because their every move was martial arts, or rather, they had already become martial arts themselves. At the same time, the heavenly martial God was also a path that they had developed to reach the realm above the true God tier. If any of them could reach the heavenly martial God realm, coupled with their true God tier advanced grade strength, it was very likely that they could break through the barrier of the boundless universe and advance to a higher level. In addition, the heavenly martial God did not refer to the level of strength, but a martial arts realm. Logically speaking, ordinary people might become heavenly martial gods because of their high comprehension. However, it was extremely difficult. Galamans, who had the world's limit potential, had yet to become a heavenly martial god. This showed how difficult it was. No matter what, this Lord has already ordered us to act. Furthermore, he is still waiting for us. We cannot let him wait too long. At this moment, the second true God, Kulas, said in a deep voice. That's right, but this attitude of victory really makes me unhappy. Let me have a taste of this Lord's skills first. The fighting spirit in Galaman's heart burned wildly. He immediately turned into a golden stream of light and rushed towards the other party. At the same time, when he flew over, he also took out his weapon. They were two high-tier deity-level golden scimitars called the Twin Golden Blades. He spun crazily, and the two scimitars in his hands turned into a hurricane of golden blades that swept towards him. An extremely pure aura of the law of sword that seemed to be able to destroy everything erupted from his body. All the laws seemed to be shattered in the face of this saber hurricane, leaving only the sharp saber chi that filled the sky to dominate the world. Galaman's true god tier title is, True God of Saber. He's an extremely rare and pure true god who only follows the law of saber. According to the lifeless boy, the other party's sword Dao domain is already infinitely close to that of a master god tier. It's just that the promotion energy in his body is insufficient, and he hasn't comprehended the power of will. Coupled with the limitations of the boundless universe, he has been stuck in this realm. Now that I've seen it with my own eyes, it's true. 1/to slay all techniques. When Zhou saw the other party's laws, he was secretly amazed. This is a super true god tier that's not inferior to Emperor Pangu at his peak back then. He admired this fellow even more. After that, he didn't defend and only quietly waited for the other party to fly in front of him, before slashing at his chaotic divine body. Clang! A loud bang that resounded throughout the divine kingdom's world projection sounded. Then, Galamans gazed at the dual sabers that did not even cut through the skin of his opponent's divine body and could not help but be stunned. This, Galamans found it hard to accept. He had thought that there was a gap between him and the other party, but why was the gap so huge? He had used almost all his strength to attack, but he was actually unable to break through the other party's defense. Is this still a fucking divine body? He wasn't fighting a top-notch defensive true god-tier divine artifacts, right? Galamans thought to himself. However, he did not expect that the complaint in his soul would really guess the truth. Now that Zhou had become a king, his force and domain were already infinitely close to the limits of the true god-tier realm. Even though there was still an extremely difficult gap to cross from the master god-tier realm, very few people in this realm could defeat him. And the force of the chaotic divine body was closely related to his strength realm. Which meant, his current chaotic divine body had already reached a force comparable to top-grade defensive true god-tier divine artifacts. No matter how strong Galamans was, it was naturally unbelievable for him to easily break through defensive true god-tier divine artifacts. Then, he wouldn't be a true god-tier, but a master god-tier. Even if it was a master god who had just entered the master god-tier elementary grade, it would still take some effort to break through a defensive true god-tier divine artifacts. Chapter 1078 Galaman's Master God-Tier Elementary Grade Law Skill, Heaven Slaying. Return. Speaking of which, when Galaman saw that his full-strength attack did not work, he was very indignant. He took a deep breath and suddenly retreated more than 100 kilometers. Then, he raised his twin sabers and charged at Zhou's divine body again. Then, he slashed his body with all his might again. If he didn't do it once, he would do it again. If it didn't happen the second time, he would do it 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times. In the blink of an eye, Galamans turned into countless afterimages and slashed at one of Zhou's divine bodies more than 1,000 times. Not far away, upon seeing this scene, Kulas, Zeroda, and the other true god-tiers of the lifeless race were initially shocked by Zhou's strength. However, they felt a sense of sorrow and fear in their hearts. The unquestionably strongest among them actually had such difficulty in attacking this lord from the outside world. They couldn't even break through the other party's surface defense. Fortunately, the other party was kind and did not have any ill intentions. If they were from the outside world with malicious intent, wouldn't they be powerless against an enemy of this level? Attack together. However, you have to be careful. Even though we can attack with all our might, the methods we use can't be too inferior. Remember, this lord is only playing with us. Don't be impatient and use unpresentable methods. At that time, if you want to die, don't blame me for reminding you first. As the second true god tier of the lifeless race, Kulus was silent for a few seconds before speaking. Okay. Don't worry, we're not that stupid. The true god tiers did not hesitate. Even though combat-type true god tiers like them would easily go crazy if they fought, it was not a problem for them to deliberately control their combat emotions and rationality. As for whether it was fair to attack together. Now, the two of them were not on the same level at all. There was not much of a problem for them to fight side by side. After that, they did not waste any time. They immediately took out their trump cards and charged at Zhou. Then, they attacked Zhou together with Galamans. When Zhou saw this scene, he laughed loudly. His voice shook the universe, but he did not say anything. Instead, he allowed them to attack his divine body. In any case, with the strength of the chaotic divine body, Eve was not afraid that these fellows could injure him. If he wanted to subdue a group of experts who were born to admire strength, he had to be stronger, more arrogant, and more terrifying than them. Zhou was now demonstrating this point. Therefore, he was very patient. After half an hour, the sixth true god, Sax, stopped his attack. He looked at Zhou, who was like a heaven-splitting giant, and suddenly began to retreat with a look of fear. Right on the heels of that, the eighth true god, Great Yelu, stopped his attack with a look of horror on his face. He retreated to the same position as Sax and quietly hovered in the air. Next was the second true god tier, Kulus, the 11th true god tier, Aluka, 9th true god tier, Feni. The true god tiers of the lifeless clan stopped their attacks and retreated. They were all afraid. The lord in front of them was a terrifying existence that they could not defeat or even injure no matter what. At this moment, only Galamans, a true god tier, was still attacking. He seemed to have gone completely crazy. He kept attacking a spot in an attempt to break through the defense. However, no matter how many times he attacked, Zhou's chaotic divine body was like an indestructible supreme barrier. No matter how he attacked, he could not injure the divine body at all. Suddenly, he calmed down and looked at Zhou quietly. What law battle body is this? He asked after a few seconds of silence. The chaotic divine body. Zhou's voice rumbled like a high and mighty god explaining to the world. The law of chaos. Is it the supreme law known as the source of all laws? The law of chaos. Is it the supreme law known as the source of all laws? The law of chaos is indeed called the source of all laws, but in terms of supreme, it's not qualified. Zhou chuckled. Above the chaotic laws, is there an even stronger law? What is that? Galaman's eyes lit up as he asked. The Tao cannot be taught lightly. You haven't comprehended any signs of that law yet. Even if I tell you, you won't understand. Instead, you'll rely on your imagination to comprehend it randomly. This will be detrimental to your Tao. You follow your own path. Those who are poor in their Tao will end up in the same place. When you reach a certain level, you'll naturally know what you want to know. Zhou patiently reminded him. This god had extraordinary potential. He even surpassed any subject he had ever seen. He still thought highly of him. Thank you for your guidance, sir. At this moment, Galamans was completely convinced by Zhou. He fell silent for a second before saying solemnly, I still have one more move. Please guide me, my lord. After this move, no matter what the outcome is, I have nothing to regret. Oh. Zhou Zhou's interest was piqued. Try it. Your Excellency, please be careful. I've never displayed this move in front of others, but the power of this move is already so strong that it's about to leave the true god tier level. Galaman said solemnly. What? As soon as these words were spoken, the true god tier cultivators were in an uproar. They looked at each other in shock. This guy was actually holding back when he was fighting them. All the Wuxian clansmen who heard this through the live broadcast were excited and looked forward to Galaman's next performance. Come. Zhou Zhou's voice was low. Galaman's took a deep breath and sat cross-legged in the void. Then, he held the saber with both hands and stood to the left and right. He closed his eyes. After a while, a Galaman's phantom flew out of his divine body and slashed at Zhou Zhou's divine body with two sabers. Master God tier elementary grade law skill, Heaven Slaying. This strike carried a brilliant might. It condensed his supreme obsession to break through the cage of this world and see a new world at a higher level. It was just like what a book said. I want the sky to no longer cover my eyes. I want this land to no longer be able to bury my heart. At this moment, Zhou Zhou actually felt a sense of threat from the saber. Galaman's had already passed through space and arrived in front of Zhou Zhou. He slashed at Zhou Zhou's body with his two sabers. However, at this moment, a gentle holy white light lit up on the surface of Zhou Zhou's huge divine body, illuminating the entire boundless universe. Under the light, one could vaguely see a layer of bright white shield that was imprinted with everything in the world, the sun, moon, and stars, covering Zhou Zhou's body. The things in the world and the sun, moon, and stars on the armor seemed to really exist. They grew and developed according to their trajectories. It was very unbelievable. It was the defensive True God tier advanced grade True God artifacts, Sun-Moon concentrated armor. In the next moment, Galaman's saber landed on the Sun-Moon star armor and paused for a moment before slowly and firmly cutting into it. Galaman's actually caused damage to a True God tier divine artifacts. Zhou Zhou clicked his tongue in wonder. If not for his True God tier divine artifacts automatically protecting him, the saber would have really struck him. Even the defensive True God tier divine artifacts of a True God tier advanced grade couldn't withstand his saber. If he were to cut a small hole in it, his chaotic divine body would probably be cut open. At this moment, when Galaman saw that his full-strength saber had penetrated more than a meter deep into the True God tier divine artifacts in front of him and was unable to advance any further, he smiled bitterly. He pulled out his two sabers with force and bowed to Zhou Zhou. He uttered sincerely, I concede defeat. When the True God tiers, other lifeless race God spirits, and ordinary lifeless race members who were watching the battle heard this, they could not help but feel inexplicably disappointed. All the most powerful beings in the entire universe had been defeated by one person. They felt that their race's confidence had been dealt a blow. You don't have to feel hurt. At this moment, the lifeless master's voice resounded in the hearts of all the lifeless race God spirits. It uttered indifferently and proudly. When my master was at the legendary tier level, he had killed a pseudo-true god with the combat power of a true god. As soon as he became a low-tier deity level elementary grade god spirit, he killed 3 true god tier enemies. His Majesty is only at the low-tier deity level intermediate grade now, but among the true god tier in the outside world, there are very few opponents who are compatible with my master. It's normal for you to lose. As soon as these words were spoken, all the true god tier were dumbfounded. Even Galamans, who had just lost, could not help but feel dazed when he heard this. This battle record. Is it a joke? At this moment, Zhou Zhou's voice sounded. You're good. 9-color divine radiance flashed from his body. When everyone saw him again, they saw that he had already returned to his original height. He walked in front of Galamans and nodded slightly at him. He chuckled and said, "If it weren't for the fact that my true God-tier divine artifacts automatically came out to protect me, you might really have been able to injure me. If it weren't for the fact that my true God-tier divine artifacts automatically came out to protect me, you power really have been able to injure me. As for this place, you don't have to worry. I will specially build a cross-border teleportation gate for you so that you can voyage between the two worlds freely. By the way, I am the Lord of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, Zhou. My designation is Common People's Regal. If you choose to abide me, you can address me as your Majesty in the future." Zhou uttered to all the lifeless race god spirits. "We are willing." All the lifeless race god spirits agreed without hesitation. They could not think of any reason to refuse following such a promising super expert who had broader horizons and could return to this place at any time. Zhou nodded slightly. Then, he briefly introduced the situation of the Supreme Continent and his territory to the gods. With a thought, he opened a space gate to the king's city. Then, he brought all the true god tiers and god spirits back to the Blazing Sun King's city. Only the living beings of the great lunar exterminating boundless universe were left to spread the legend of this common people's regal, Zhou. Chapter 1079 State Banquet. Master God Tier Dishes. From the moment Zhou entered the great lunar exterminating boundless universe to the moment he came out, it seemed like a long time, but it had only been less than 3 to 4 minutes in reality. However, it still gave all the god spirits in the Blazing Sun Kingdom a fright. When these god spirits and true god tiers from the great lunar exterminating boundless universe appeared, they almost immediately sensed their existence. Then, they immediately flew out and looked at these god spirits and true god tiers in shock and vigilance. As for the ordinary life forms below god spirits, because their levels were low, they could not sense the existence of these god spirits who deliberately hid their auras. Therefore, they did not know that a large group of people of foreign race god spirits and true god tiers had suddenly descended upon the Blazing Sun Kingdom. "Everyone, don't think too much. These are the worshipped god spirits and true god tiers that I've just recruited to join our Blazing Sun Kingdom." Zhou appeased the gods. The gods were shocked and they heard this. What method did His Majesty use to actually find a lineup comparable to all the ordinary god spirit reserves and true god tier reserves of the already extinct Shadow Clan in such a short period of time? Then, they became excited and ecstatic. As the god spirits of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, their kingdom's strength and influence had become stronger. Therefore, the first to benefit would naturally be the native god spirits and true god tiers. And the first to be unlucky was naturally the enemy of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. At this moment, for the umpteenth time, they felt that joining the Blazing Sun Kingdom and becoming the Blazing Sun Kingdom's worshipped god spirit was the right choice. As for Yellow Emperor, Buddha Lord, Patriarch Lu, and White River, they were naturally the most surprised. Now that Zhou was the patriarch of the human race, he had become stronger. Other than the Blazing Sun Kingdom being the first to benefit, the entire human race would definitely be the second to benefit. The Yellow Emperor looked at Sun Wukong, Yang Jian, and the other human god spirits with a proud and even smug smile. It was as if he was saying, "How about the patriarch I chose for you?" What else could the god spirits of the human race say? It could only be said that the veteran speaker had a good eye for people. I finally realized that every time we see the patriarch, he will give us a huge surprise. Every time, no exceptions. Patriarch Lu sighed. The Yellow Emperor and the other true god tiers nodded in understanding. In the sky, when Zhou saw the reaction of the divine spirits, he smiled. He turned to look at Galamans and the other true god tiers and god spirits of the lifeless race. On behalf of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, this king welcomes everyone to join our kingdom. In a while, let's go to my divine kingdom world together and hold a state banquet of the highest level. I'll treat it as a welcome party for you. At the kingdom's banquet, I will send someone to tell you in detail what specific benefits there will be to becoming the worshipped God Spirit and true God tier of the Blazing Sun Kingdom. For example, the Time World, the true God tier divine artifacts, the myriad races inheritance tower, the military merit exchange system, status, wealth, cultivation world, and so on are all benefits for our country. I believe that you won't be disappointed or regret it after you find out. Zhou Zhou smiled. Thank you, Your Majesty. Galamans and the other god spirits of the lifeless race said respectfully. They were also looking forward to it. From His Majesty's way of dealing with people, his actions were definitely not bad. And most importantly, they could now clearly feel the high level of this continent. It was so high that even true god tiers like them could not understand it. In such a high-level world, there must be many super experts for them to challenge and satisfy their desire to fight. Challenging the strong. This was the second most important reason why they followed His Majesty to this world. As for the first important goal, it was naturally to serve His Majesty. The gods and spirits who were already affected by the peaceful times were already looking forward to their future lives in the Blazing Sun Kingdom. At the same time, they looked at the god spirits and true gods of the Blazing Sun Kingdom, led by the Yellow Emperor, the Buddha Lord, and the other true gods. They couldn't help but secretly click their tongues. His Majesty's influence in this world was indeed strong. Looking at the lineup of these people, even if His Majesty did not make a move, just these ministers and subordinates of His Majesty could easily defeat all the factions in the boundless universe. He could challenge them one-on-one later. Some true god tiers and god spirits of the lifeless race looked at the Yellow Emperor and the others and were already eager to give it a try. The Yellow Emperor and the others also noticed the burning gazes of these god spirits. They were old and wise, and they immediately saw the astonishing fighting spirit in the other party's eyes that originated from the depths of their bloodline. Did His Majesty find a group of warlike gods? The Yellow Emperor said in surprise. However, he did not dislike it. A warlike god is even better. The Buddha Lord smiled. Although his gaze was as gentle as the flow of time, his words were extremely firm. In the struggle for supremacy among the myriad races, what we need the most are these brave and warlike god spirits. Those turtle god spirits who only know how to cultivate diligently and only want to protect themselves when they encounter war. To us, having them is no different from not having them. Sometimes, it's even better to not have them. Fair enough. Yellow Emperor and the others nodded. Then, they heard their patriarch announce that he would hold a welcoming banquet for these new true god tiers and god spirits in the Divine Kingdom world. The gods cheered when they heard this. Then, under Zhou Zhou's lead, they headed to the Divine Kingdom passageway and arrived in the Divine Kingdom world. As the Prime Minister, Zheng Yuanqi was indeed responsible for arranging this welcoming banquet. As they were all superhumans and even god spirits who helped to set up the banquet in less than a moment, a grand banquet that could be stated to be world-class was arranged. One after another, god spirit-level dishes were sent up respectfully by legendary-level waiters. They were placed in front of the god spirits and true god tiers, causing them to exclaim in surprise and excitement. In the end, there were even 36 master god tier dishes that were served, causing all the true god tier present to exclaim in disbelief. Their gazes were fixed on these 36 master god tier dishes, unwilling to move. Even though these 36 master god tier dishes were not personally made by master god tier master chefs, they were simply made by some true gods who were good at cooking using master god tier ingredients. It was said to be a master god tier dish. In reality, it was just a feast of ingredients meticulously made by master god tier ingredients. Even so, it was enough to make these god spirits and even so true god tiers go crazy. The laws contained in master god tier ingredients were all master god tier laws. Otherwise, they would not be respected as master god tier ingredients. Even if such ingredients were not made into finished delicacies, it was enough to provide them, the true god tier, with a higher level of comprehension. It was even enough to provide them with comprehension of the Master God tier path. It could be stated that eating a mouthful was better than cultivating for 1,000 years or even so more. Is this our welcoming banquet? Isn't it too extravagant? Even Master God tier ingredients have been served, and there are so many of them. Oh my God, how many Master God tier ingredients do we need to create these 36 God tier delicacies? Quick, split it up and eat it. It's rude. His Majesty hasn't eaten it yet. How can you be the first to eat it? I'm so happy. I'm afraid that even so some Master God tier have never eaten so many sumptuous dishes, right? That's for sure. Do you think Master God tier ingredients can be found everywhere? After eating this welcoming banquet, I feel that dying is worth it. The true God tiers beamed with joy. As for those God spirits below the high tier deity level, they could only be envious. But this couldn't be helped. Master God tier ingredients were limited, and not everyone could get a share. However, this scene had an excitation effect on them. His Majesty's generosity could be stated to be known by all. As long as they advanced to the true God tier level in the future, they might have the chance to eat these Master God tier dishes. Chapter 1080 Uriel's latest intelligence. Your Majesty, come and try this Master God tier intermediate grade dish, 9 Immortal Soup. Zheng Yuanqi personally served the best Master God tier intermediate grade dish and said to Zhou Zhou with a smile. Sure. Zhou Zhou also knew that if he didn't eat it, none of the other God spirits would dare to eat it. Therefore, without any hesitation, he scooped a small bowl and slowly tasted it. After he finished eating, he put down his bowl and smiled. Well done. Do you want some too? Your Majesty, you must be joking. Zheng Yuanqi smiled bitterly. Even though I'm already a low-tier deity-level elementary grade God spirit, I still can't digest this Master God tier delicacy. If I dare to take a bite, my soul will probably ascend in the next moment and stay in your divine kingdom forever, Your Majesty. Even so, Zheng Yuanqi could still feel how much His Majesty valued him. How much trust and recognition did he have to make a minister like him eat the same delicacies as His Majesty? The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. Zhou Zhou smiled. Your Majesty, would you like to speak? Zheng Yuanqi forcibly appeased his emotions and asked Zhou Zhou. The other God spirits had actually been paying attention to Zhou Zhou. Upon hearing this, they immediately quietened down and looked at Zhou Zhou in unison. None of the God spirits dared to speak, let alone move their chopsticks to eat. When Zhou Zhou saw this scene, he could not help but think of the banquets he had experienced on earth. Alright, I'll tell you then. Zhou Zhou pondered for a moment before standing up and looking at the gods. All the gods looked at Zhou Zhou. When Zhou Zhou saw this, he suddenly smiled and said, then I'll say one thing. Welcome all the God spirits of the lifeless race to my blazing sun kingdom. In the future, I hope that we can work together to make the blazing sun kingdom stronger and become an empire-level lord faction, a divine kingdom-level lord faction, or even an even stronger lord faction. In addition, we can also climb to a higher peak on our respective God spirits' paths. Okay. That's the end of the speech. Eat and drink. After saying that, Zhou Zhou sat down. The God spirits were stunned for a moment before feeling a little regretful. Even though they really wanted to eat those God spirit-level delicacies, as His Majesty's loyal subordinates, they really wanted to hear more from His Majesty. Your Majesty, what you said was too short. Zheng Yuanqi smiled bitterly. Zhou Zhou smiled and did not say anything. In fact, he had wanted to say even less. However, he suddenly remembered that the state banquet was held to welcome the true God tiers, so he added these two sentences. Otherwise, he would have made all the gods present eat and drink. Oh yes. Take out a small portion of these master god tier ingredients and distribute it to Bai Yun, Wu Xian, Qi Xiantian, Wuxiao, Ing Ning, and Yuan Kong. Zhou Zhou instructed. Yes, Your Majesty. Jing Yuanqi smiled and nodded. Then, he personally sent someone to make it. Soon, Bai Yun and the rest received 36 small plates of master god tier level delicacies. His Majesty specially instructed me to send this over. Even though all of you have yet to become true god tier, you already have a high tier deity level body. You should be able to barely use some master god tier dishes. Just try to avoid overeating. When Zheng Yuanqi reached the end, he specially reminded her. Thank you, Your Majesty. When Bai Yun and the rest saw these dishes and heard Zheng Yuanqi's words, they were instantly touched and promptly bowed to Zhou Zhou in the distance. The next step was for the gods to drink to their heart's content and enjoy the delicacies. As Zhou Zhou drank the wine, he looked at the joyous scene in front of him and might not help smiling. Such a scene could be regarded as a myth on the cerulean planet or Earth. Then what am I? God King. Speaking of which, with my current power, it's more than enough to form a pantheon group. At least it's much stronger than the Octavel pantheon and the Vapolius pantheon. But there's no need for that. Zhou Zhou thought. As the Lord of the Gods, his relationship with the gods under his command was much closer than the relationship between the gods in the pantheon group. Thinking back to the past, when I first met Octavel, I had the status of a young lord and obediently bowed to him. But now I've previously grown to a height that far surpasses Octavel. Now, the only ones who can make me address you respectfully as a senior are probably Master God tier and stronger experts, right? Zhou Zhou sighed inwardly. Then, he did not think too much about it. After he chatted with the gods for a while, he didn't stay any longer. He left Zhou Manage's clone behind and strolled back to his blazing sun palace. None of the gods present realized that the original Zhou Zhou was now just a clone. At the blazing sun palace, the Heaven Ascension Hall. Zhou Zhou sat on the throne. Below him were Bai Yun and Wu Tu, whom he had called over. I didn't interrupt your meal, did I? Zhou Zhou chuckled and said. Your Majesty, you must be joking. After eating the main god tier delicacy that your Majesty gave us, we were already full. Later on, when I wanted to look for your Majesty seemed to have foreseen it and found us in advance. Bai Yun smiled. It's the identical for me. I'm here to look for His Majesty to report the latest information on the people of foreign races. Wu Tu uttered respectfully. That's also what this king wants to hear. Zhou Zhou nodded. Wu Tu, you go first. Yes, Your Majesty. Wu Tu nodded, then opened his personal terminal and projected all the latest information about the people of foreign races into the air in front of the three deities. Your Majesty, please take a look. Wu Tu pointed at the projected regional map of the Supreme Continent and emphasized on the slowly moving red lines. These are the people of foreign races who were originally prepared to support the Shadow race. However, after they learned that they had been conquered by us, they promptly changed their direction and prepared to head towards a no-man's land called the Blackrock Mountain region. The Blackrock Mountain region is not under the jurisdiction of any lords or races because there are very few resources and the road conditions are extremely bad. Therefore, there are some fearless outlaws gathered here and they treat this place as their temporary residence. I suspect that they must have communicated beforehand when they went to Blackrock Mountain City almost at the identical time. I'm afraid they're planning something unfavorable to His Majesty. As for the other piece of information, it's about Uriel. According to the information shared by the Starfire mercenary team, Uriel has been secretly gathering troops. Currently, he has gathered more than 1 trillion troops and more than 50 true god tiers. I'm afraid they will make a move in the next few days. Wu Tu introduced. Bai Yun's expression was solemn. Zhou Zhou looked at the projection map and suddenly chuckled. Looks like they really won't give up on me. Just as well. It saves them from running away. They want to kill us, and so do we. When he reached the end of his sentence, also though his tone was very normal, Bai Yun and Wu Tu, who were present, felt a cold killing intent. Chapter 1081 Zhou Zhou's Premonition. War Summary. Am willing to lead troops to fight for His Majesty and suppress these people of foreign races. When Bai Yun heard Zhou Zhou's words, she immediately stood up without hesitation. I'm also willing to cooperate with Legion Commander Bai Yun to fight for His Majesty and eliminate these people of foreign races together. Wu Tu also stood up and said firmly. Okay. But tomorrow, well bide our time. Pay attention to setting up defenses around the kingdom. Make sure that no matter where something happens, our soldiers and god spirits can rush over immediately. Zhou Zhou thought for a moment and said. Yes, Your Majesty. Bai Yun and Wu Tu agreed without hesitation. Then, Bai Yun asked, Your Majesty, do you think that these people of foreign races will launch a surprise attack on our Blazing Sun Kingdom tomorrow? To be precise, it should be Uriel. Zhou Zhou nodded and said, This fellow is known as a potential Master God tier not only because his potential has reached the Master God tier level, but also because he has a firm will, is decisive in his actions, and has a tenacious and bold personality. Our Blazing Sun Kingdom's forces don't even need to deliberately inquire about information. It's obvious that they're growing day by day. Uriel will never allow us to continue growing stronger in order to complete the mission assigned to he by the higher-ups. If he continues to grow stronger, we will be looking for him instead of him coming to look for us. He will probably attack tomorrow. Defend yourselves. If they don't strike after half a day, well, do something else. The reason why he had such a bold guess was not only because he knew Uriel very well, but more importantly, his Lord Talent intuition vaguely told he that a powerful enemy would suddenly appear in the country tomorrow. If he dared to conduct troops out to battle, he would probably know that his home had been stolen halfway. Zhou Zhou was naturally unwilling to accept such a thing happening. Therefore, even with his Talent intuition and Lord Talent, there was a chance that he would make a mistake. He had to stay in the kingdom and wait for the enemy to arrive. It didn't matter even if the enemy didn't appear in the end after all. He just wanted peace of mind. The foundation of the Blazing Sun Kingdom was too important to Zhou Zhou. He didn't want any accidents to happen here. Yes, Your Majesty. Bai Yun and Wu Tu said respectfully. Then, Bai Yun said, Your Majesty, I have an idea. What kind of ideas? Zhou Zhou asked. If Uriel wants to launch a sneak strike on our Blazing Sun Kingdom tomorrow, why don't we beat him at his own game? Well, first send some people disguised as our army to pretend to leave the kingdom and head to the territory of the enemy people of foreign races to carry out a conquest. After Uriel and the others find out, they will definitely let down their guard and launch a sneak strike on our country even more boldly. In this way, when they arrive in our Blazing Sun Kingdom and are about to launch an attack, our main army hidden in the country will suddenly appear and catch they off guard. At the same time, the soldiers we sent out will suddenly return to reinforce us and work together from the inside to eliminate all these enemies. Bai Yun suggested her own plan. Upon hearing this, Zhou Zhou began to think seriously. Soon, he felt that Bai Yun's strategy was not bad. Uriel was cautious by nature. This could be seen from the fact that the other party had been waiting for an opportunity to recruit soldiers and buy horses for a long time after coming to the high continent. If not for the fact that the development of his territory was getting more and more terrifying, the other party would probably continue to recruit troops for a period of time. They would only really appear after they were completely confident of winning with a single strike. If he suddenly did not move and defended his territory with all his might tomorrow, the other party would definitely be more cautious. They might even change their strategy. This would definitely not be good news for his side. If he followed Bai Yun's plan, not only would it be much easier to counterattack, but he could also completely cut off the other party's escape route and prevent them from escaping. Even though I have the 9 worlds divine demon dreamfall array that can prevent most enemies from escaping my territory as the master god tier seed of a top-race civilization like the Titans, Uriel might have a way to crack my 9 worlds divine demon dreamfall array. Bai Yun's strategy can also prevent this from happening. Zhou nodded. Let's do as you say. Yes, Your Majesty. Bai Yun uttered respectfully. By the way, Your Majesty. This is the summary of today's war. With that, Bai Yun also opened a projection through her personal terminal, which was next to the projection of Wu Tu's intelligence map. Zhou looked at it. They did not gain any points from it as they had been fighting in the Shadow Clan all day and had not eliminated the target of the Eye of the Heaven's anger. He opened the rankings and took a look. First place, Human, Lord of the Blazing Sun, 79 billion faction points. Second place, Original Spirit Race, True Lord, 7,132 million faction points. Third place, Shepherd's God Race, Heaven Chasing Lord, 5,611 million faction points. Fourth place, Chaos Gods Race, Great One Lord, 4,922 million faction points. Fourth place, Myriad Spirit Race, Spiritual Venerable Lord, 4,912 million faction points. This true Lord of the original Spirit Race is catching up quite quickly. Yesterday, this guy only had 1 billion faction points. Today, he has 1 billion faction points. Even though this efficiency is not as high as my continuous hunting of the Eye of the Heaven's anger, it's not far off. Looks like I have to mention the efficiency of killing the target of the Eye of the Heaven's anger. Zhou pondered to himself. Fortunately, today was only the 18th day of the King of 10,000 Kings activity. There were still 12 days left. He still had enough time to widen the gap between him and these top-notch lords, so he was not in a hurry. In addition, there was something worth noting. The Myriad Spirit Race's ranking had been surpassed by the Chaos Gods race. Zhou was not surprised. Even though the Myriad Spirit Race was considered a top-race civilization, it was still inferior to the Chaos Gods race after all. It was expected that they would be surpassed. He closed the faction points ranking and continued to look at the war. They had eliminated more than 126 billion Shadow Clan soldiers and people of foreign races, 1,143 god spirits, and 9 true god tiers in the Shadow domain. The war supplies left behind by these enemies, the racial reserves of the race, and their spoils of war were enhanced by the titles of the King of Loots and the Strongest Lord. They obtained a total of more than 25,630,000 legendary tier mist cores, more than 104,213,000,000 epic tier mist cores, more than 25,519,000 extraordinary tier mist cores, more than 402,599,000 diamond tier mist cores, more than 801,165,000,000 white platinum tier mist cores, more than 1,110,160,000,000 yellow gold tier mist cores, more than 1,250,050,000,000 white silver tier mist cores, 2,580,000,000,000 green bronze tier mist cores and 597,100,000,000 black iron tier mist cores. 5,100,030,000,000 skill books. 3,100,050,000,000 pieces of equipment. About 800 trillion units of basic materials. Basic elemental gem resources, 50,025,000,000 units. More than 2,280,000,000 units of thunder element gems. 1,640,000 units of life elemental gems. 1,830,000,000 units of death elemental gems. More than 12 million units of time elemental gems. More than 15 million units of space elemental gems. 150 billion and 12 million origin crystals. 1-080-000-6099 Green Bronze Tier Lord Talent Crystal Fragments. 1 Epic Tier Lord Talent Sphere. 10 Epic Tier Lord Talent Crystal Fragments. Chapter 1082 Epic Tier Lord Talent, Gate to the Shadow Realm. More than 5,190,000,000 units of divine crystals from low-tier to high-tier deity level. 6,400 true God-tier divine crystals. More than 90 million low-tier to high-tier deity level divine artifacts. 216 true God-tier divine artifacts. There were a total of more than 80 million divine spark fragments, God-tier medicinal herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. 1,060 master God-tier herbs, God-tier ingredients, God-tier ores, God-tier blueprints, and other treasures. A damaged pseudo-racial divine artifact, Shadow Canopy. In addition to these normal gains, there were also building blueprints, special treasures, Great Lunar Jade Book, True God-tier War Machinery, Shadow Puppet, Special Building Blueprint, Great Lunar Sacrificial Platform, War Machinery, Shadow Divine Boat Manufacturing Blueprint, High-Tier Deity Advanced Grade Battle Formation, True Illusion Mirror, and other spoils of war that were unique to the race and civilization. Zhou couldn't help but nod in satisfaction after reading this part of the summary. As expected of the Shadow Clan, the gains from this war were almost 10 times the gains from conquering the Demon Flood Dragon race yesterday. In addition, the harvest of the Life Elemental Gems and Death Elemental Gems also surprised him. He originally had about 1 billion Life Elemental Gems and Death Elemental Gems. Now that, he had a total of more than 47 trillion Life Elemental Gems and Death Elemental Gems, he had fulfilled all the requirements to upgrade his territory to the legendary level. However, he wasn't in a hurry to level up, nor did he immediately use the Epic Tier Lord Talent Sphere. Instead, he continued to look at the God Spirit list and the Military Strength list. He first looked at the list of God Spirits. After today's battle, because they had eliminated enough enemy soldiers and God Spirits, a total of 85 legendary tier advanced grade soldiers had advanced to low-tier deity level elementary grade God Spirits. Coupled with the 1,547 God Spirits obtained through the 10,000 Spirit Saint, the 216 God Spirits who had submitted to him after being captured, and the 1,700 God Spirits who had come to join the Blazing Sun Kingdom in the morning, the total number of God Spirits under he directly reached 5,947. The total number of God Spirits had already reached the number of ordinary God Spirits that Uriel had led when he first came to the High Continent. In addition, in terms of the number of true God tier, he originally had 5 true God tiers under him, excluding Carol Moali. Today, through the 10,000 Spirit Saint, he had incite defection up to 11 true gods of the people of foreign races. In addition, he had captured 2 true God tiers through war. Now, these 2 true God tiers had already submitted. In total, he now had a total of 18 true God tier subordinates, even excluding Yellow Emperor and other true God tiers. Including the Yellow Emperor, Buddha Lord, Bai He, and Patriarch Lu, he had a total of 24 true God tier subordinates. With my current strength, even if I fight Uriel's people of foreign race alliance head-on, I'm confident that I can take him down without Uriel. Even with Uriel as a variable, I have a certain degree of confidence in winning. Zhou sighed inwardly. Thinking back, when they first heard that Uriel had led an army of people of foreign races to the supreme continent to deal with him, all of them felt that they could not resist this behemoth. He could only do everything he could to stall for time. The humans had no choice but to retreat to the primordial world because of Uriel's arrival. And now, after such a short period of time, he was already confident in defeating the other party. His development speed was indeed a little ridiculous. He thought silently. After dealing with Uriel, the human race might be able to walk out of the primordial world. Zhou thought. If he could take down Uriel, who was a tough nut to crack, those enemies of the people of foreign races who wanted to deal with he and the human race would probably realize the situation. Under the circumstances where the Master God tier did not appear, Zhou and his humans could be said to have no worries in the High Continent. Even the Divine Kingdom Lord factions on the High Continent could not deal with Zhou unless he took the initiative to provoke them. Therefore, when the time came, the humans could completely retreat from the primordial world and return to their previous lives. Zhou was actually looking forward to the scene of Uriel leading the people of foreign races to attack tomorrow. He stopped thinking and looked at the final list of troops. Today, through the 10,000 Spirit Saint, he had obtained the loyalty of 1,623,766,975 soldiers. Later, through persuasion, he had also turned the more than 31,612,000,000 captured soldiers of the people of foreign races into his own soldiers. As for the Lords of the Star Alliance, they had also incite defection more than 101,050,000,000 fog monster soldiers along the way. Even if 20% of the soldiers were given to the Blazing Sun Kingdom, Zhou would still be able to obtain more than 21 trillion soldiers. The soldiers under him had now reached 1,460,233,963,023 soldiers, excluding the soldiers of the Star Alliance. Including the 120 billion soldiers of the Star Alliance, he now had more than 1,580 billion soldiers under him. Among them, there were 326 billion, 15,429,879 Black Iron Tier soldiers. There were 376,262,234,255 Green Bronze Tier soldiers. There were 20,890,600,000 White Silver Tier soldiers. There were 240,069,067,860 Yellow Gold Tier soldiers. There were 165,078,619,660 White Platinum Tier soldiers. Diamond Tier soldiers, 55,060,209,120. There were 12,179,007,600 Extraordinary Tier soldiers. There were 6,517,007,506 Epic Tier soldiers. There were 87,384,959 Legendary Tier soldiers. As for the God Spirits under him, after today's Shadow Clan war, their strength had also increased to varying degrees. Among them, Vicky, Baiyun, Wu Xian, Feng Luo, Suan, and Luo Sheng had all advanced to the high-tier deity-level elementary grade. Nazario and Extreme Dragon had advanced to the level of mid-tier deity-level advanced grade. Light Sacred Dragon, Ingasol had been promoted to a low-tier deity-level advanced grade God Spirit. Most importantly, Qi Xiantian and Yuan Song possessed already sensed that they had reached the last step of advancing to the true God tier. Now, they had already entered the time world to cultivate in seclusion. If nothing went wrong, they would probably advance to the true God tier God Spirit tomorrow. Qi Xiantian was originally a talented sword immortal, and Yuan Song was a member of the Shepherd's God race with a top-notch bloodline. Their potential is already astonishing. Coupled with the help of the Master God-level Book of the God Spirit, they have finally attained the stage of becoming true gods. Zhou was filled with emotions and anticipation. After that, he chatted with Bai Yi and Wu Tu for more than an hour about the specific arrangements for tomorrow before asking the two of them to leave. After they left, Zhou took out the epic tier Lord Talent Sphere that he possessed obtained from the Shadow Clan's true god, Jakro. The Shadow Clan's patriarch, Aces, was able to hand over the position of the Shadow Clan's patriarch to Jakro before the battle. Other than the fact that they are brothers, I'm afraid it's additionally thanks to his extraordinary tier Lord Talent. Zhou thought. Then, he gazed at the specific information of this Lord Talent. Treasure name, Lord Talent Sphere, Shadow Realm Gate, Treasure Grade, Epic Tier, Treasure Effect, after absorbing it, the Lord will have an epic tier Lord talent, Shadow Realm Gate. Treasure description, a Lord talent sphere from a Shadow Clan True God tier. After absorbing it, you could obtain an epic tier Lord talent. Shadow Realm Gate. Zhou lifted his eyebrows thoughtfully. Chapter 1083 Gate of the Shadow World. The Domain of the Shadow World. 1083 Gate of the Shadow World. The Domain of the Shadow World. Even though Zhou did not know the exact function of the door to the Shadow Realm, he knew what the Shadow Realm was. The Shadow Realm was actually the Shadow Realm that extraordinary tier professionals were familiar with. It was also known as the Shadow Realm. Because all things had shadows, the Shadow Realm and the myriad worlds were connected and coexisted. Some extraordinary individuals who were proficient in spatial jumps could use the world of shadows to teleport beyond distance. They called their spell Shadow Jump. If it was a more powerful plane traveler, they could even use the Shadow World to visit any world in the myriad worlds. Under normal circumstances, if the Shadow Realm had such a shocking effect, it could be said to be equivalent to the place that military strategists had to fight for. It would definitely be coveted by many powerful factions in reality and would want to capture it. In fact, that was indeed the case. In history, countless powerful factions in the real world had invaded the Shadow World. Even powerful races and civilizations like the original Spirit race, the Chaos Gods race, the Shepherd's God race, and the Myriad Spirit race had coveted the Shadow World and started a war. In the beginning, the local forces of the Shadow World could be said to be retreating step by step, almost losing the territory they relied on to survive. However, on the eve of the Shadow World's complete invasion, a will-level existence was suddenly born in the world of shadows. Even though this will-level existence was far weaker than powerful wills like the Abyss Will, the will of the Heaven Realm, and the will of the Immortal World, it was not something a Master God tier or even a Supreme God realm could provoke. If one angered the will of this shadow, even a top bloodline civilization would not be able to withstand the terrifying consequences. Hence, the various races retreated in fear of this will-level existence and signed a peace agreement with the various factions of the Shadow World. From then on, all the races in the world were not allowed to invade the Shadow World. They were not even allowed to enter. They were only allowed to allow individual life forms to perform spatial jumps and some trade activities through the Shadow World. At the same time, they had to compensate the Shadow World for the losses caused. From then on, the battle of the Shadow World came to an end. Because this was a very humiliating matter for the various races, and because they did not dare to provoke the will of the Shadow, all the races in the world had completely sealed off the news of this war. As a result, the Shadow World had never been famous until today. Many god spirits even treated the Shadow World as an ordinary shadow plane and only used it as an auxiliary means to carry out shadow jumps. If not for the fact that Zhou had the secret bloodlines of many races in his mind, he wouldn't have known about this. It's actually a Lord talent related to the Shadow Realm. Zhou clicked his tongue in wonder. Then, he stopped thinking and chose to absorb the Epic Tier Lord Talent Sphere. The next second, the Epic Tier Lord Talent Sphere immediately turned into countless purple light spots and surged into his glabella. Zhou closed his eyes. A moment later, he reopened his eyes again after some time. Then, he immediately opened his Lord's personal information. A new update appeared in his Lord Talent column. A new word appeared, Shadow Realm Gate, Epic Tier. The 35th Lord Talent. Zhou nodded in satisfaction. Then, he opened the details of this talent. Lord Talent, Shadow Realm Gate, Epic Tier, Shadow Realm Gate, Specific Talent Effect 1, you can open a door to the Shadow Realm that belongs to your Lord's faction and enter the Shadow Realm. You and the members of your territory have legal status and have the right to live, travel, trade, and live normally in the Shadow World. Specific Talent Effect 2, in the Shadow World, you have an initial territory belonging to your Black Iron Tier elementary grade. You can spend resources to enhance this territory and expand your territory in the Shadow World. At the same time, in the Shadow World, you are protected by the will of the Shadow World. Your Lord faction will have a basic friendly diplomatic relationship with any faction in the Shadow World. Under this level of friendly and higher diplomatic relations, you can trade freely with any force in the film world. When your diplomatic relations with other forces fall below friendly level, the trade effect will automatically disappear until at least friendly level diplomatic relations are restored. Specific Talent Effect 3, you and your territorial faction can pay a certain price to use a portion of the Shadow World's warp gate to undergo another world warp and head to another world. As the level of your territory in the Shadow World increases, you will unlock the authority of more worlds' warp gates and head to more worlds. Specific Talent Effect 4, you are protected by the will of Shadow and have the nomological talent of the Law of Shadow, True God Tier. He actually gave me the authority to warp through the world of shadows. Zhou Zhou's gaze landed on Talent Effect 4. His eyes lit up. With the authority of the Shadow World's warp gate, he wouldn't have to take long-distance transportation when heading to other worlds. He could directly warp through the Shadow World. It was time-saving and convenient. Furthermore, if the Supreme Will activates the Lord activity of the myriad worlds in the future, I can go directly to the other world through the Shadow Realm. This way, I can avoid being ambushed by the experts of the people of foreign races on the way. My safety can be uttered to have greatly increased, be it for me or my soldiers. Furthermore, if I want to conquer the myriad worlds in the future, this warp gate of the Shadow World is the best shortcut for me to conquer the myriad worlds. TSK Tisk. Those top-tier bloodline races paid countless prices and sacrificed countless experts, but they were still unable to adopt down the Shadow Realm and use its convenience. In the end, they could only sign a compensation agreement and escape dejectedly. And I didn't do anything. I only relied on my Lord talent to obtain the authority that those top bloodline races dream of. Zhou Zhou was satisfied. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this Lord talent was top-notch. As expected of an epic tier Lord talent. Let's go adopt a look at the film world. With a thought, Zhou Zhou activated the door to the Shadow Realm. The next second, wisps of shadow aura flew out from his feet and gradually condensed into a tall and majestic ancient black door that was about 100,000 meters tall and 10,000 meters wide. The huge door was wide open. Zhou Zhou did not hesitate and walked in. In the Shadow Realm, a shadow sun and a shadow moon hung high in the dark sky, emitting a faint black light. On the ground, shadow mountains, rivers, cities, and shadow creatures could be seen everywhere. They observed shadowy. 1 second they were still there, and the next they might disappear. In this shadow, a small black territory was entrenched. Zhou Zhou was standing there, curiously browsing the 2 buildings in front of him. One of the buildings was the Lord's wooden house, and the other was the Gate of Summoning. Good God! Another Gate of Summoning. If it was when I first arrived in the High Continent, this Lord talent could allow a new Lord to summon twice as many subjects every day. But it's useless to me now. Zhou Zhou shook his head. Any 10,000 spirit saint could incite an insight defection that far exceeded the subjects summoned by the Gate of Summoning. Did he still require another Gate of Summoning? However, it was not bad to be a safe base. In the future, if he failed to fight for the Lord of all races, this might be a place for he to make a comeback. He observed elsewhere and suddenly focused his gaze. A black door stood not far to the east of the Gate of Summoning. Another door. Zhou Zhou raised his eyebrows. Chapter 1084 Warp Gate. Harrod World. 1084 Warp Gate. Harrod World. Zhou Zhou walked to the black door. He looked at it and a text notification appeared. Building name, Warp Gate, construction level, black iron tier elementary grade, construction effect, spend 100 black iron tier mist cores to open this warp gate. You can head to the Supreme Great Cosmos, High Continent, Small World, Herod World. Building hint, upgrade the level of the territory of the Shadow World and then upgrade the warp gate itself. You can unlock more and higher level warp coordinates of the warp gate and head to more alternate worlds. Construction upgrade, 10 Shadow Realm Black Iron Tier Territory tokens, 1000 wood units, 1000 sand units, 1000 metal units, 1000 stone units, 1000 Black Iron Tier Mist Core, 1 Shadow Gem. So this is the warp gate. Zhou nodded. He looked at the two teleportable worlds. There was naturally no need to mention the high continent of the Supreme Great Cosmos. As for the second Herod world, he was very curious. 100 Black Iron Tier Mist Cores is not expensive. Zhou did not hesitate and threw 100 Black Iron Tier Mist Cores into the black door. The next second, a black shadow vortex gradually appeared in this black warp gate. Zhou walked forward and reached out to touch it. Apart from feeling wisps of shadow aura swimming on his fingertips, his mind was also sent a message by the warp gate. This warp gate could lead him to the High Continent and the Herod World. He needed to choose one of the two before he could enter. Zhou naturally chose the world of Herod. Then, he stepped into it and disappeared. The cross-border teleportation of the warp gate was not a spatial teleportation, but a magical teleportation of the law of shadow. Zhou felt as if his divine body had transformed into a flowing shadow aura. Through some magical channel, he arrived in a new world in the blink of an eye. Then, the shadow aura returned to its normal divine body state. After Zhou arrived in the new world, he did not immediately check what the world was like. Instead, he first checked his divine body and soul. The method of directly turning himself into shadow energy had frightened him a little. He felt a little uneasy if he didn't check. Thankfully, after he finished checking, he did not find any problems with his divine body. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. Then, he looked at his surroundings with relief. This was a verdant mountain filled with greenery. The air was filled with elemental particles that were not dense. Zhou could sense that the energy level of this world was very ordinary. It was probably only to the extent of nurturing legendary tier experts. It would be very difficult to continue nurturing stronger experts. If this world wanted to nurture a god spirit level expert, it could only be created by legendary tier experts who used their extraordinary comprehension to break through the world's restrictions and receive the energy of the outside world. The other option was to devour the source of this small world and become a world god. Only then could one become a god spirit. However, such a world god would either succeed or fail. Unless one had great opportunities and good fortune in the future, it was basically very difficult to reach a realm above the god spirit realm. In summary, the difficulty of becoming a god in the Herod world was more than 10 or 100 times higher than becoming a god spirit on the high continent. Zhou was not surprised. This was the upper limit of the small world. At this moment, he even felt that as long as he used the chaos holy power in his body slightly, he could destroy this small world. Even if he only used legendary tier power, he had to be careful. A fragile world. But it's not without its merits. Zhou's divine sense spread out without limit. In the blink of an eye, it covered the entire world. Soon, he had more or less figured out the details of this world. This world came from a god named Herod. The other party was a magic god spirit who had achieved success with water magic and was still alive to this day. He had even unified faith in this world, making this world a world of faith that provided Herod with an endless stream of faith. The greatest value of this world to Zhou was, this place contained a complete and comprehensive magic civilization extraordinary tier system. In the future, if he wanted to nurture mages, he could use this place to nurture them. As for whether Herod would object, Would he dare to object? It was just a mid-tier deity-level elementary grade god spirit. Speaking of which, this is the second time I've come to an unfamiliar alternate world since I returned from the Insect Tribe universe. Insect Tribe universe. That should be a boundless universe-level universe. In the future, I might be able to see that Insect Lord again with the help of the Shadow Realm. Zhou thought to himself. To the current him, the Insect Lord and the Dragon God Lord were naturally no longer in his mind. The reason why he suddenly had the idea of meeting the Insect Master was just a whim. It would be best if he could meet that old friend, but it didn't matter if he couldn't. At this moment, a blue water light descended from the sky and landed in front of him. It transformed into a water elemental creature that emitted the aura of a mid-tier deity level. It was the deity of this world, Herod. God of streams and water elemental magic, Herod greets your excellency, common people's regal. Herod said respectfully. He lamented inwardly, never expecting this. He was a water element deity who was slacking off. One day, he would actually be able to see this common people's regal who was already famous in the myriad worlds in front of him. Wasn't this common people's regal still in the high continent? Why did he suddenly arrive to his small world? In order to avoid the disputes between the lords of the myriad races on the high continent, he had specially brought his world, which was hundreds of millions of light years away, to this remote place of the myriad worlds. Him did not want other deity spirits to know of his existence and be forced to be involved in the chaos of the myriad races. He never expected that he would not provoke this calamity of all races, but a calamity would descend from the sky. Herod even wondered if he had accidentally offended the master god tier of misfortune. Otherwise, how could he be so unlucky? You know me. Zhou was not surprised by the other party's arrival. Him just did not expect the other party to see through him at a glance. Your Excellency's reputation has long spread throughout the myriad worlds. Even though my little realm is in the eastern deity realm in the remote place of the myriad worlds, I've heard of your Excellency's reputation and seen your portrait. Herod stated obsequiously. You don't have to be nervous. Zhou could see the nervousness in his heart. Him waved his hand and said, this king only happens to have a spatial passageway that leads to your world. However, the development of your magical civilization here is indeed not bad. In the future, this king wants to send some subjects from the country to your place to further their studies. Are you willing? Yes. Herod complained in his heart, but he maintained a smile on his face. Chapter 1085 Subduing Herod. 1085 Subduing Herod. Don't worry, I'm not occupying your place for nothing. I'll rent this place to you. I'll give you one mid-tier deity-level elementary grade divine crystal a year. I'll rent it for 100 years first. After Zhou finished speaking, he casually threw 100 mid-tier deity-level elementary grade divine crystals to the other party. This bit of divine crystals was naturally nothing to him. The divine crystals he had harvested today amounted to more than 5 billion. These 100 mid-tier deity-level divine crystals were like a drop in the ocean to him. In fact, with his current power, even if he forcefully occupied this place, Herod wouldn't dare to say anything against it. However, as the saying went, one shouldn't hit a smiling person. If the other party were to be rude, he would just wave his hand and attack this place. He wouldn't feel any burden at all. However, the other party's attitude was so humble. Even if Zhou wanted to do something violent, he felt a little embarrassed. So be it. However, Herod's eyes suddenly widened as he looked at the 100 mid-tier deity-level elementary grade divine crystals in front of him. Your Majesty! The divine crystals you gave me are too much. Herod thought for a moment and suddenly gritted his teeth. Then, he knelt in the void and said, how about this, Your Majesty? You don't have to give me so many divine crystals. I'm willing to hand over my world that has been operating for tens of thousands of years to your majesty. Please give me a chance to submit to you and let me serve your majesty. Zhou Zhou looked at him in surprise before smiling. Can you bear to do that? I see that you've managed the world here very well. You must have put in a lot of effort here, right? It was more than a considerable amount of effort. I've spent most of my life in this world, okay? Herod's heart bled, but he had no choice. This common people's regal was said to be able to kill true god-tiers as if he was slaughtering pigs and dogs after all. If he wanted to kill him, he could probably do it with a thought. Herod did not want to gamble on the other party's kindness, so he simply cut off his tail to survive and gave the world he had painstakingly built to the other party, hoping to exchange for a trace of the other party's kindness. This way, he might be able to survive from the hands of His Excellency. Moreover, it was said that the god spirits under the other party's command received good treatment. It was even said that the god spirits who followed, he could have a full set of divine artifacts on them. Even though Herod didn't believe in such ridiculous things at all, as long as he could survive in the end, he wouldn't ask for more benefits. Hence, he firmly said, "Your Majesty is right, but am still willing to follow your Majesty. Compared to the glorious future of following your Majesty, a world of faith that I've spent tens of thousands of years in is nothing." Then, he contributed a ball of water that emitted an azure light. This is the source of this world. As long as the divine sense recognizes you as its master, this world of faith will belong to you, your Majesty. Please accept it. He said firmly. Zhou Zhou was speechless. He picked up the world origin and played with it for a while before recognizing it as his master. Then, he immediately felt that this world of faith already belonged to him. He could be comparable to a creation god in this world. It could be said that he was omnipotent. Even the life forms in the resurrection world could be easily resurrected. He only needed to consume a little of the origin power of this world. Even the previous owner of this world, Herod, could be expelled from this world with a thought. From today onwards, you are one of the worshipped god spirits of this king's blazing sun kingdom. Take this as a welcome gift. Zhou Zhou suddenly said and threw a spatial ring to the other party. Herod hurriedly took it and subconsciously probed it with his divine sense. Then, he was immediately shocked. There were a total of 6 mid-tier deity-level intermediate-grade water attribute divine artifacts placed in it, exuding the awe-inspiring might of divine artifacts. Herod could not help but open his mouth wide. Then, he looked up at Zhou Zhou. This, your Majesty, you're giving them all to me? Your Majesty, are you joking? Herod could not believe it. So is the legend true? Were all the god spirits under the command of your Excellency, the common people's regal, equipped with divine artifacts? It's true. Zhou Zhou patted his shoulder meaningfully and said with a smile. Herod was shocked, and the spatial ring in his hand almost fell. How did His Majesty know what he was thinking? Could it be that His Majesty still had the ability to see through minds? But I'm a real god spirit. And a mid-tier deity-level god spirit at that. How terrifying was His Majesty's strength to be able to see through the thoughts of a mid-tier deity-level god spirit. At this moment, even though he was holding 6 mid-tier deity-level divine artifacts that had greatly increased his strength, Herod was still filled with reverence for Zhou Zhou. At this moment, Zhou Zhou spoke again. Your world belongs to this king now. The object of belief here should also change to believe in this king as soon as possible. You will be in charge of this matter. Also, your world needs a protector, so you can stay here as a protector for the time being. With the divine relic you have now, even ordinary high-tier deity-level experts are probably not your match. If a true god tier descends, I will leave a few life-saving trump cards for you before I leave so that you have a chance to ask the kingdom for help. The true god tier on our side will rush over as soon as possible. I won't stay any longer. In the future, a warp gate will be set up here. If you have anything to do, you can use the warp gate's coordinates to head to the location of my blazing sun kingdom. After Zhou Zhou finished speaking, he told the other party about the film world. In any case, the other party was already one of them. It was fine to tell the other party. He just had to remind the other party not to leak this news. So His Majesty came to His Majesty's universe through the Shadow Realm. His Majesty is indeed resourceful. His Majesty actually did something that even the top races and civilizations couldn't do easily. Don't worry, Your Majesty. I won't leak this news. Herod exclaimed, followed by endless flattery. Zhou Zhou nodded and did not say anything else. With a thought, he opened another warp gate and permanently solidified it here. The price was 1 diamond tier mist core a day. This was naturally nothing to Zhou Zhou. But even so, Zhou Zhou did not choose to bear it. Instead, he let Herod be in charge of the expenses. It was just 1 diamond tier mist core a day. As a mid-tier deity-level god spirit, Herod naturally did not care at all and immediately agreed. Then, Zhou Zhou stepped into the warp gate and disappeared in front of Herod. Herod looked at Zhou Zhou's disappearing back, and the confusion in his eyes was gradually replaced by excitement. He looked at the 6 water-type heavenly artifacts in his spatial ring and excitedly said, "I'm so lucky. Even if I lie down, I can still appear out of thin air and hug His Majesty's thigh. Moreover, I don't have to go to the Supreme Continent and participate in the conflict of the myriad races to risk my life. I must have been protected by a lucky Master God tier." After Zhou Zhou returned to the Shadow World's territory, he didn't stop. Instead, he returned to the Blazing Sun Kingdom in the real universe and called the current patriarch of the Shadow Clan, Tarokal, over. "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.